Welcome to Manhwa Recaps, spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. Huge shout out and special thanks to the channel members. The manhwa starts with birds flying high in the sky over what appears to be a fortress off in the distance inside of a valley. A man starts to say that he used to believe that even someone like him, whose talents awakened and blossomed and took root on the battlefield, could begin a new life. As we see soldiers having a war, he says that he wished in that new life he'd be able to create a family, something that he'd desperately been yearning for. But alas, he was mistaken, as that never came true. We hear another voice calling him tenacious, saying it's been a long time since someone made him swing his sword more than 10 times. He asks if he is the famed Argrik, the talent that blossomed on the battlefield. As we see, he is missing an arm, but still is ready to fight, even though he is gassed out. Argrik's surprised that he knows who he is, saying that he never thought he would be so happy about that. He starts to laugh, saying it's an honor that someone such as himself recognized him. We learn that the other man's name is Duke Thermion. Thermion laughs at the fact that he knows his name. Argrik says of course he would, as Thermion is one of the 6 Hexa-class knights in the Altheon Empire. Just a day on this battlefield is more than enough for him to feel the weight of the Black Wave. Thermion is from the Altheon Empire, while Argrik is from the Drenic Empire. Thermion says that means he faced him despite knowing who he was, and it would be such a shame to end a talent like his prematurely, asking if he has any intentions of surrendering at all. Argrik's eyes do not falter, but they do look a bit sad, and Thermion notices this. Argrik picks up his blade and swings it around, saying that he was born on the battlefield, so of course he will die here. The air instantly gets tense around both of them, and Argrik begins to move forward, and so does Thermion, and they slowly begin walking toward one another. Thermion says despite him saying that, he can still see regret lingering in his eyes, and he would have made a great rival if he were able to grow a bit more. He looks reluctant about doing this, but knows what must be done. He begins to imbue a purple aura into his blade, and he says that if this is Argrik's wish, then he hopes that in his next life he will be able to let go of his regrets. Thermion's purple aura gets even brighter, as it is now in between both of them, soon followed by his attack, which might be the black wave that Argrik mentioned earlier. We start to get more history about Argrik, and he explains that the war between the Drenic Empire and the Altheon Empire lasted for many years. Throughout the many casualties, we learn that his father was one of them, which left his mother a young widow and a refugee of war. She left him alone in this chaotic world while he was a baby, and she took her final breath not long after he was born. He says it was obvious what would happen to a war orphan. We see him and his little group running around, scavenging armor and weapons from fights, polishing them up, and slowly donning them themselves, focusing on survival, doing anything and everything they can. After turning 14, Argrik was sent to his first battlefield. We see everybody else as pretty much grown-ass men. But that does not matter, as they are getting ripped apart by none other than a young Argrik. As he quickly kills 3 enemies in rapid succession, and that was where his talents first awakened. We hear him screaming, and he says the mana core in his heart raised his movements and senses to a level that could not compare to before, and he even had a reddish lightning aura around him. We hear another voice calling out to him, calling him Commander Argrik. They say they plan on recommending him for the upcoming special knight appointment. Argrik says after surpassing 3 mana cores and becoming a quad core, he was on his way to joining the Hexa-class knights, as the person talking to him says that it won't be impossible for him to reach there. And Argrik says he has finally acquired the opportunity that he's been desperately wanting. After this war, he might be able to finally find peace and settle down somewhere that's not a battlefield. As he grows tired of constantly fighting, the battle began like any other, with him getting rid of enemy soldiers left and right, taking out whole units solely by himself, as this is something he's been doing ever since he was a child. He was finally about to achieve everything he's ever wanted, but before he could even think, he was sent flying away due to Thermion's overwhelming power. We see that Thermion's black wave actually didn't kill him but rather only cut his sword and shattered his blade. Now with his blade broken, it was time for Thermion to give him an honorable death. Thermion smiled and dashed forward, thrusting Argrik straight through his heart. But the only thing lingering in Argrik's mind is the fact that he only wanted to settle down and have a family of his own. He looks down as his armor gets shattered and he gets sent flying across the battlefield. He doesn't even try to fight it because he knows these are his final moments. So he gets carried away with the attack, eventually stopping at a halt, and he says like that, his dream was pitifully crushed. As tears rolled down his face, mixing with his blood on the ground. At least that's what he thought as it all went dark. But slowly he began to see a light, and when he opened his eyes, he wondered what was going on as he heard somebody calling out, asking if their little Dane was finally awake. They call him a good boy, saying that he doesn't even cry. We hear a woman asking how his eyes are so clear and beautiful. She puts her hand over his, saying that she's sure this child is God's gift to them. Her husband laughs, saying he sure is. Ardrik wonders what's going on and what they are saying about him being a child. He then gets lifted by the father, who says, "Dane, you must become a fantastic spearman and follow in my footsteps." We learn that his name is Arkan Sogers. The mother then asks what he is saying that Dane will become a fantastic assassin just like her. Her name is Lily Sogers. Arkan asks how the youngest is supposed to be an assassin, saying that would be horrifying, and that a man should use a spear. They start to argue about it. She says that an assassin is better than a spearman, as he could easily sneak in and assassinate his targets and slip out unnoticed, which is much cooler than using a spear. Ardrik says that somehow he thought his life was over on that battlefield with Thermion, but instead he ended up reincarnating, and not just that, it was within the Altheon Empire, his enemy, and he is the youngest son of a certain count. His parents decide that they will both teach him both the spear and assassination. They continue yapping about it, trying to decide which has priority. But it cuts to a carriage man telling Arkan they arrived, and he's surprised that it's so soon. He tells Lily to take his hand. She asks what he'll do if the other members of the castle see him, and he asks why it matters, saying he'll only try to hold his wife's hand. And they start to have a wholesome moment, but Ardrik says he does not want to be a part of this. Then his eyes instantly change to that of amazement, as he actually finally gets to look around the home he'll be living in, which is very grand. It's unlike anything he's ever experienced, as he's lived his entire life in tents around the battlefield. Lily says that it looks like Dane's super happy to be home, and he's smiling so widely. We see Ardrik's actually having a great time. He says if it's a house like this, it might be easier for his talents to spread than he initially could have ever dreamed of. We get a 2-month time skip. And we hear Ardrik struggling to speak. Lily is super happy that he can babble now. Ardrik says this is a new experience to be on both sides. He explains that he never got to really meet young children due to always wandering on the battlefield. The few children he did see were those wrapped in bandages and crying because they had nowhere else to go. Many cried for their parents, so they slowly succumbed to starvation, fading away. Compared to that, House Sogers is a fortunate and wealthy place. As they are a count family, they are quite wealthy, which means he will never starve. His dad quickly opens the door, telling him to look at this. As he slams it into the ground, he tells Ardrik proudly that this is called a spear. He asks him how it is, saying that he must find it pretty. Ardrik explains that his father is the strongest Hexa-class spearman in the Empire. Despite his looks, he was a war hero known as the Blue Whirlwind. Lily starts barking at him, asking how he can enter a child's room with such a sharp thing. He says that he just wanted to show it to Dane. She starts yelling at him, saying that she told him no early education. She was previously the best assassin in the Empire. She tells Arkan that if he keeps doing this, she will teach him the basics of stealth while he is still young. Arkan tries telling her that everybody is doing it these days and that magic households usually put a staff next to the child the moment they are born. She asks if a spear is the same thing as a staff, saying that a spear is sharp. Ardrik sighs. He says that the reason the two of them are putting so much importance on this feature is that his two elder sisters chose careers that had nothing to do with spearmanship or assassination. Cool little fortress. We finally get to see his sisters. They are doing something to him to make his cheeks bigger. One of his sisters' names is Arabella, and she is, I guess, force pinching his cheeks. Ardrik explains that due to her talent in magic, Arabella had walked the path of a mage ever since she was little. At 12, she was already a 3-chain class mage. Since the highest class for a mage was a 9-chain, this meant that she was a genius who was already past entry level. She asks him if he wants to learn magic with her later, saying she is so bored by learning it herself every day. He can't speak. Why is she poking him? Then we are introduced to his other sister, who says summoning is good as well, and her name is Claire. She is also a talented summoner and succeeded in her first summon at the age of 7, and she is now able to handle 2 summons at once. Arabella quickly tells her that she should touch him too since he is so soft. Claire looks a bit annoyed but instantly looks at his cheeks, and Ardrik says that he thought she didn't like him at first, but it seems more like the jealousy one feels when they get a younger sibling. She is less wary of him than she was before. As she stretches her finger out, she wonders how he can be so soft. She says that it might be fun if he is talented in summoning, and she will teach him that later. Ardrik laughs since everyone wants to teach him their own specialty. We get to see a nice little family picture, and the recap is that his father is a Hexa-class spearman, His mother was the former best assassin who even tried to assassinate the emperor in the past, his eldest sister Arabella, the genius mage, and his other older sister Claire, the genius summoner. The house of Count Sogers was the perfect noble family and the ideal family that he had imagined. He wonders if there is even a meaning to revenge in this life. Although his death was regretful, that place was a battlefield, and it's funny to even say that he would take revenge against somebody who defeated him fair and square. While he is lost in thought, he instantly hears everybody yelling about what they are going to teach him, and he sits up out of his crib. We see that he is very happy since all he's ever wanted was something to call family, and he is really glad he was born here. They continue just yelling at one another, and he says they might be a little dysfunctional, but they are still his family now. He explains that there is a special ceremony in House Sogers. It is called the choosing ceremony. When a child born into the family turns 1, many objects will be put on a table in front of them. People try to predict the child's future by the objects the child will grab. And it is now time for Argrik's first birthday. Some noble guests say that they can't wait to see what he's going to pick since both the young ladies ended up being both a mage and a summoner, respectively. Another man says that they only know once they go in, and they all head inside. There are so many people here to watch what a child is going to pick. Low-key, kind of wild. At least they all seem nice as they are genuinely invested in his family. Lily tells Dane just to pick the one he likes. And he wonders what he should do. Everyone is waiting for him to choose the object they've placed. We hear his father's thoughts as he says that his son probably can't help but get drawn in by the dragon tail. The dragon tail is a spearhead made from the rare or durkin. When mana is imbued into it, it becomes as sharp and heavy as the mana put in it. The user hopes his son takes it. But Lily says he's too handsome to become an assassin, but she still hopes that he will choose the dagger. The dagger is called Nighthorn, and it is created from the ore ethereal, which can hold all of the world's elements and can store and combine multiple poisons. Arabella says that he'll definitely become a mage, and he's going to follow after her to the academy in the future. The object she has presented is called a subspace pouch. We all know what this is. But Claire seems the most nervous, and she says that if Dane picks summoning, she'll take him and fly on Dekran together. As she put up a summon sign, once a summoner uses it, they'll receive a code depending on their talent, and they can call upon their summons through it. She hopes that her brother picks it so they can bond together. Argrik wonders why it feels like he can hear what they are thinking, and then he sighs, saying this is troublesome, but he can't avoid it. He wonders what object to take, and he begins to crawl forward to the academy. He then says he's going to take the sword and that he's going to take it forward while everybody laughs, just enjoying the ceremony. He says that he should look at the crowd's reaction and choose based on that. As he starts moving, everybody in his family starts to get super excited, trying to guide him toward their own item in their own way. As he gets closer to the items, the air suddenly gets heavier, and he's surprised as they all begin to glow very brightly. As if they were all made of gold, Argrik wonders what's going on, and Lily asks Arkan, but he has no idea. Everybody starts to go crazy, asking how it's possible that all four would react, and it seems that the young master is a generational genius. Argrik is just enjoying it, and he says that he was talented in the war, but this life is on another level. Arabella asks what they should do now, saying this has never happened before, and Arkan says he can hardly believe it himself, and he looks at his wife, saying that he guesses they all need to teach him separately. Arabella asks if he's serious, and Claire looks surprised. Argrik is happy that he can actually blossom his talent. It jumps us to some time later as we hear some kind of sparring match going down in the training area. We see a young boy's feet and an older man's hand. Once it's all settled down, we see that it's none other than Argrik and his father, Arkan. He's a little older now, but he tells Argrik he did a good job, saying he's perfectly polished the technique he taught him before. Argrik thanks him, and he is now 7 years old. Arkan continues praising him, saying, "As expected of my son." Argrik looks over surprised as a man named Herman walks forward with something in his hands. Arkan says it's just in time. Argrik asks if this is what he thinks it is, and his father says yes, it's his birthday present. Originally, he was going to give it to him during his birthday banquet, but he wanted to give it to him before his mother gave him something. He's been preparing this for 2 years. It was specifically commissioned from a well-known craftsman in the capital. Argrik is shell-shocked, and Arkan tells him happy 7th birthday in advance, smiling warmly at him. Argrik drops his practice spear, instantly grabbing the new one, thanking his father, and saying he'll use it well. He looks at the spear, saying it's amazing. The black spear handle and the silver spearhead together look amazing, and that it's also very light. Arkan asks if he likes it, and Argrik says that he loves it. Arkan also tells him that he requested it to be adjusted to his physique and hopes he gets used to it. Argrik begins to swing it around, having the time of his life, and his father looks at him fondly. He then asks if he remembers the difference between a sword and a spear and grabs his spear off the weapon rack. Argrik says that with the spear's length, you can effectively restrict the opponent from getting close to you, and with its narrow contact area, it has a high attack efficiency. Arkin says correct. However, when you reach a certain level, it'll be harder to use than a sword. That's the fundamental problem of a spear. To attack your opponent, minimum distance is required. But he shouldn't worry about it too much, as every weapon has its pros and cons. Even swords, which are called perfect weapons, become weaker in certain situations. Argrik says that he'll keep that in mind, and his father says, okay. He begins to twirl his spear, saying that since he's got a new spear, he'll show him something awesome. Argrik's eyes are filled with admiration as he gets to see the magic power of a Hexa-class spearman, saying that this is really overwhelming. His father begins to focus, and we see him take a big step forward while imbuing his spear with mana aura, and he thrusts it forward at such speeds. It generates massive shock waves, and it sounds as if something was broken. Argrik is utterly speechless, and he says that even though his father barely thrust the spear, the space around it was completely distorted. His father explains that it was because he emitted the magic power in his body at the same time he thrust the spear. This is a technique that utilizes the trait of a core that focuses magic power in one place. Argrik says that he's heard about it from his sisters and that humans can exceed their physical abilities beyond their limits. As the number of cores increases, so does their limit. He recalls that in his last life, he had a quad core. His father says that he's glad he's been studying so well and that he has 6 mana cores. Argrik acts surprised and explains that if he hadn't died, he would have achieved that too. Arkin asks him why he doesn't give it a try with his new spear. He tells him to relax his mind and forget what he's thinking and just thrust the spear. Argrik looks determined and tells his father okay. In his past life, he didn't have any interest in spears. After realizing his talent for swordsmanship, he only used it as a secondary. And that it's time for him to actually give it his all with this. He begins to close his eyes and focus just like his father did, who watches proudly, saying that he's got great form. It took him 7 years to implement this technique, and he wonders how long it will take Argrik to achieve it. But immediately, we hear the area getting distorted and breaking, and a chill runs down his father's spine as we see that Argrik succeeded in his very first attempt, completely shattering the space in front of him. His father is utterly confused. As Argrik withdraws his spear from the distorted area, Arkin asks how the hell he did that, and he laughs, saying that he's so impressed. Argrik says that the moment he thrust his spear, he gathered magic power into one place and imbued it into the spearhead. When the magic power reached the spearhead, he cut its flow. His father says if he imbued magic power into it, that means he formed a mana core. Argrik says yes, and while reading a book about creating cores, he tried to do it, and luckily he was able to. In truth, he formed it while doing mana breathing since he was a child. His father says if that's the case, he's an exceptional genius and that he is so proud that he was born into his house. He sensed it ever since he was young, but now he's sure about it and that he will become an extraordinary warrior. Argrik smiles, saying that there will be more surprises in the future for him. Arkin wonders if his son will really become a magic spearman, assassin, summoner. That is a mouthful. It jumps to his 7th birthday as everybody's gathered at the estate to celebrate the youngest of House Sogers. We hear music as the banquet is going really well, everybody's enjoying themselves. We hear a man laughing, calling out to Arkin, asking him how long it's been. Arkin says it's been quite a while and calls him Duke. The man says there's no need to be so formal and they can just talk as usual. We see it's a familiar man, it's none other than Thermion in the flesh. His first name is actually Bout, but we'll just continue calling him Thermion as he is the head of the Thermion Duchy. Arkin says that there are many people looking at them, and he'll be less formal later. Thermion laughs, telling him to do what he pleases and asks where his son is. Arkin quickly calls him over, saying he should say hi to Duke Thermion. Argrik instantly starts to recall their fight, saying he can't believe he's meeting him here. Thermion asks if this is his son, Dane, that he keeps praising, and Argrik introduces himself, slowly starting to get a little angry from seeing him again, but nonetheless gives him a respectful greeting, saying that it's an honor to meet him. Thermion laughs, saying he has a dependable son and it looks like he doesn't have to worry about him. Thermion asks if that means he's learning the spear like he is, and Arkin says yes. Both Argrik and Arkin are surprised as a little girl walks up and greets them. Her name is Layla Thermion, she is the youngest daughter of the Thermion Duchy. As the party continues and everybody begins to dance to the music, Arkin asks Thermion how the Baroness is. Thermion says they have been searching for any and all methods, but they have yet to make any progress. Arkan says he is going through quite the ordeal, but he is certain she will get better. Thermion says if he suddenly disappears, he hopes Arkan will understand. It means he has used a scroll to quickly return to the capital. He then asks where Dane went so suddenly, complimenting him, saying that he seems witty and he wanted to talk to him more. Arkan says he wonders as well, and he doesn't see Miss Layla either. Thermion then spots them outside the window and says it seems as if the party was boring for these two children. Layla says she honestly doesn't like following her father around everywhere, but right now, she is glad she came with him. She thinks Argrik looks even more handsome in the moonlight. He tells her he is glad to hear that and that their territory is a nice, peaceful place. She says that it appears so, and there is always something going on in her territory. Nobles come every day to bow to her father, and sometimes even the imperial family shows up. Every time that happens, she needs to go greet them in a dress, and she hates it. She likes dressing simply and swinging a sword around more. He is surprised that she likes to use the sword. Layla quickly asks about him. He says that he likes both, and this place isn't nearly as lively as the capital, but every day he looks forward to his spear training the most. She is surprised he uses a spear, and then says she forgot that Count Sogers's nickname is the Blue Whirlwind. She has heard from her father many times how incredible he is. She asks if this means that he is also aiming for admission into the academy. He says no, and he is not training with the spear for reasons like that, and she asks why not, saying that isn't training to join the academy the obvious choice. And getting in is incredibly hard. He says that he is training so that he can do even better once he enters the academy. She is confused, asking him what he will do if he fails to enroll, and he says that he will simply have to try again, and if he still fails, he will take it that it isn't the right path for him. She says that she doesn't believe it, asking if he is not afraid of disappointing the members of his house, and he says not really. She says she's jealous of that, and her house finds failure unacceptable, then quickly tells him to forget what she just said. He sighs, saying that he didn't know nobles worried about stuff like this, and he asks why she thinks that, saying that she seems like she will do pretty well. She asks if he would take a look at her swordsmanship, and he asks if she means right now, and she says yes. He says only for a little bit though, and she gets really excited, asking where the training ground is, and he tells her to follow him. At the weapons rack, she quickly draws one of the blades and starts swinging it almost immediately. We see her spinning around doing all sorts of attacks while flowing smoothly between each and every one of them. Argrik says that the timing of her attacks is great, and she is very fluid, but after a while, she starts going slightly offbeat. She's gassed out and stops, asking him how that was, and he says it was a delight to watch. She gets really excited, and he gets a little nervous, saying that he should probably tell her, and then says that starting from her third form, she looked like she was taking half a step more. And that's what it looked like, since when he looked at the other forms she kept taking half a step more than before, making the later sword forms feel slightly out of alignment. She doesn't say anything, and her eyes are open wide, and he wonders if maybe he was too blunt and apologizes if that upset her. He says that it's been a while since he's seen swordsmanship. She instantly raises her blade, saying that must have been what it was, and that was the piece of the puzzle she was missing. She instantly fixes it, making them even more fluid than before, finishing with a thrust. She then runs forward and hugs Argrik, thanking him so much. He asks what she's doing, and she rubs her face against his, saying that he has an eye for this. And it's impressive to spot it in an instant what she's constantly been messing up, and she will make sure to remember this. He pushes her away, saying that she's suffocating him, asking if she could put the blade away too. She quickly apologizes, hiding it behind her back, acting as if nothing happened. He readjusts his clothes, saying she surprised him with a sudden hug. Then we hear people calling out for both Argrik and Layla, and she says it seems like they are looking for them, and he says it's time for them to head back. They do exactly that as they run toward the voices, and they wonder where they have been. Back at the main stage, his mother Lily is congratulating him on his 7th birthday and for his first Mana Core. He thanks both his mother and father, and he opens her present, surprised as it is a brooch of the family crest, and it looks like the ones his sisters were showing off. His mother smiles, telling him to treasure it, as this brooch will serve as proof of his honor and status. Everybody starts to give him their own wishes from the crowd, saying that he'll definitely grow up to be a fine man like the Count. Both Arkan and Lily smile proudly at their son, and Argrik says it's the first time he's received such a warm applause from this many people. Immediately, the entire estate begins to shake violently as there is a loud rumble heard, and everybody starts to scream, asking if it's an enemy invasion or something. Argrik looks back at his father, and Arkan says it's nothing to fret over and it's starting again, and he thought they might have some quiet today. Lily asks Argrik if he has any guesses as to what it could be, and then he suddenly realizes it, saying there's no way. From the ceiling, a magic circle appears as lightning begins to fill out of the room, and something rushes out of it at a hell of a fast speed, scaring them. They all look up at it, wondering what is going on. We see somebody descending from the ceiling, and as we get a better look at her, we see it's none other than Arabella, who does a little flip, landing on her feet. She says that she's sorry for being late and that she lost track of time. Everybody is going crazy, asking if she really just used teleportation magic, saying that you need to be at least a 5-chain mage to even open a small gate, and they can't believe she's such a genius. Argrik sighs, saying she's so loud and flashy. Even more screams are heard as everybody is looking out the window, saying there's a monster in the sky and that it's a wyvern. But they're used to it now as they understand that it's none other than Lady Claire. As we see her giant wyvern almost blocking out the moonlight, she says that she was just a little later than Arabella. She enters the room, and everybody starts to say they knew she was a genius summoner, but a wyvern was unexpected. They say it's crazy that she's only 16 years old. Arabella says that she's late, and then they stand side by side, and in unison, they call out to Argrik, telling him happy birthday, and they both smile. They both stick their hands out, holding presents, and he thanks them for coming all this way to congratulate him. Arabella says he should hurry up and open it, and she's sure they'll love it. Arkan begins to cry, saying they only gave him a letter for his birthday, but they've even prepared gifts for their younger brother. Lily laughs. Argrik opens Arabella's gift to show a ring, and he asks if this is a dimensional pouch. She says yes, as she designed it herself. The subspace magic used was of the highest chain, and she got her professor to make sure it works properly. Argrik says he knows how difficult it is to imbue subspace magic into an item, and she tells him to hold his hand out as she'll put it on. He says what's even more difficult than that is designing an artifact capable of being imbued with it. She says that just so he knows, she's applied his genetic code to it so no one else other than him can use it, and it's the only one of its kind in the world. The ring begins to glow, and Lily says that judging by the fact there's a small wave of mana, she must have used the highest grade magic stones. Arabella says if you imbue a bit of mana in the ring, it'll open and create the subspace. He won't need to go through the hassle of opening and closing a pouch ever again. He's surprised that she gave him something so valuable and thanks her. It was something only used by the wealthy on the battlefield, like commanders who were born nobles or magicians, and he never thought he'd end up using one. He instantly starts to imbue his mana into the ring, and a circle begins to form in front of him. Arabella tells him that the ring will grow as he grows older, and Arkan's surprised, and so is everybody else, including Claire and Layla and her father, as Arabella says he opened his subspace even faster than she did, and that he really is a genius. She says that he might have both a mana core and a circle. Claire then hands him her present, asking him to open hers. He quickly starts to undo it, thanking her, and inside he sees an egg. He wonders what's the deal with the egg, and she says it's not just any egg, and he needs to be careful. He asks what it is, and the rest are surprised as we see she gets right into his ear and whispers that it's a familiar, and she was trying to summon Dekran once, and that thing came out. She doesn't know what summon will be born from it, but she does know that everyone in the world will understand how precious it is. He looks at the egg, saying he's heard about it before, and that familiars, unlike summons, are a different entity. A familiar can remain permanently in the world, unlike summons. She says that nobody else will know about it yet, only him, and that they should keep it a secret until it hatches, and he smiles, saying okay. Arabella asks what they're whispering for and what's taking so long, but Claire continues saying that she doesn't even know when it will hatch, and he needs to make sure to pour mana into it daily, once in the morning and once in the evening, so that it recognizes him as its master. His mother starts to laugh, saying that it sure is nice that his sisters are back, asking if he agrees, and he says yes, and he likes it a lot. Arkan then clears his throat, saying that while he's happy that his sisters were able to make it, maybe they could also greet their parents now. Arabella realizes she made a mistake and asks if he's been well, saying that she was just focused on giving Dane her gift. They instantly start cheering with one another, and he says that it's fine, and he pats their heads, saying that they seem healthy, and he's glad they came all this way for their younger brother, and they should rest well. Layla watches their wholesome family moment from far away, and we see her making a sad face. Argrik notices her and wonders if she's about to leave as she nods, and as she goes to leave, he wonders why she looks so lonely. The next day, birds are flying over the city, as Thermion is walking through it, saying that she was much more incredible than he expected, and as expected of the best magician at the academy, and she is a desirable talent. She also suits his son, the best swordsman in the academy, And if their two houses could combine, it would give birth to a faction that even the imperial family would have a hard time touching. Then nobody will be able to mess with his house or his children, and he should mention engaging his children today when he talks to Arkan. He then hears the sounds of training from the training area, wondering who's doing it so early in the morning. We see a spear getting sent flying in all types of directions through the air. It's none other than Argrik practicing his spearmanship. With his eyes completely full of focus, he is drenched in sweat. He takes a step forward, thrusting, and then immediately pivots to the side, practicing deflecting, and then immediately counterattacking. He continues charging forward while spinning his spear, and then he rears his arm back and rapidly thrusts it forward multiple times, each with their own heavy impact. Thermion finally made it to the door and is surprised that it's none other than Argrik. He says that it's incredible. His movements and concentration doesn't feel like a 7-year-old at all. Even his simple stabs are of such high technique that spearmen who have been on the battlefield for years could still learn from it. We see Argrik is tired but not giving up, and Thermion just wonders how this is possible. He heard rumors about him showing incredible talent at just 1 year of age, and he thought they were just rumors, but it turns out they were true. He starts to pay extra attention to Argrik's feet, and he comments on his footwork, saying that it seems very similar to a swordsman's, and he wonders if he picked up swordsmanship at such a young age as well. We see some debris from the arena flowing through the air as Argrik raises his spear and then swings it down sharply, saying he doesn't know who's there, but it will help save face if they come out instead of hiding. Thermion can't believe he got caught, and says more importantly his movements feel strangely familiar, and that he's definitely seen them somewhere before. He enters apologizing to Argrik, saying he wasn't trying to spy on him. Argrik runs over, surprised that it was him, and then Argrik quickly greets him as he wonders if he noticed anything odd. Thermion says he was mesmerized by Sogers's new rising star this early morning, asking if he'll forgive him for his mistake. Argrik immediately says that he's forgiven, and Thermion laughs internally, saying that he sure has guts, and that now that he looks at him, his body is not trembling even a little despite having trained so long. He didn't even have a mana core when he was this age either. He compliments Argrik's thrust attacks, saying that he's definitely inherited his father's talents. He then notices the spear, and Argrik tells him that it's something his father prepared for him, and he's grateful that he recognizes it. Thermion begins to smile, saying that this was the best answer he could have given him. His son, even when he was young, also had excellent skills and manners, but not to this extent, and perhaps he should consider arranging a marriage on this side as well. He says that actually, Layla has been training her swordsmanship. They are of a similar age, so maybe they could be friends once they enter the academy. Argrik laughs, saying he'll make sure to get along with her. Thermion says he likes his forthrightness, and it seems that he has bothered him long enough with his training. He goes to leave but remembers something, asking if he's ever trained in swordsmanship. Argrik realizes that his old habits came out with him realizing it, and he's not surprised he recognized it with one look. He says no, and that he's read some textbooks on swordsmanship, but he's never trained it. Thermion thinks about it, saying it's still strange, and he swears he senses something from the battlefield on him. But then laughs, wondering what he's thinking, saying there's no way that's the case, as he's just a child. He says that it seems like he's spent too much time on this simple walk, and that he shall see him later when they see him off. Argrik tells him to take care, and Thermion continues, saying that if he happens to visit the capital, to find him, he must repay the hospitality that he received here in the Count's castle, and he has become personally interested in him. Argrik says that he'll make sure to visit, and he wonders if he remembers him. To defeat someone who defeated him before, just thinking about it is getting his blood pumping. If he starts preparing for it step by step now, he's sure that he'll be able to do it, and that he'll definitely defeat him in this life. Later in the day, we hear Hermann telling him that it's time to return. Argrik asks if he's been waiting for him, and Hermann says that it is his duty to always attend to his needs from the shadows, handing him a towel to wipe his face with. Argrik says that maybe Hermann should receive some assassination training, and he asks how everybody is, saying they must be busy. Hermann says that everybody is indeed busy preparing for the second banquet, and that the other nobles have already begun to arrive. Argrik then asks about his sisters. Hermann says they opened a teleport gate together and went to the academy. They said they didn't have a choice because they had midterm soon. Argrik says that's a shame, but there's not much he can do, and he tells Hermann it's time to go back. Hermann says yes, young master, as they leave, and he wonders if he should double check on the gifts that his sisters gave him. We see him getting dressed as he's greeting more people at the banquet, and as his night continues, he seems to be growing more tired with every passing moment. Then we see him taking a break in the garden, saying that this shit is exhausting. His schedule is more packed than usual due to his birthday. At least he can find some solace when resting in the gardens, and that the gardener has made this place so beautiful, and he feels at peace when he looks at the flowers. His older sister says that flowers are what contain the most mana in nature, and he gets close to some, saying that since he has time, he should analyze their mana. He closes his eyes and begins to focus, trying to feel their mana in the air, saying he's been training as much as he can, and he's not had any noticeable development in magic, and he's still not sure what to focus on. To him, there are too many things going on that he doesn't know which one to hone in on, and he says having too many talents can be troublesome at times. He sticks his hand out and feels a strong gust of wind, saying this must be the flower's mana, and it has such a massive flow to it. If one can feel the mana flow of nature and make it their own, it can then settle in the body and become a magic circle. It starts to wrap around his hand, and he says this body's affinity towards mana is crazy, and he can see something that others can only feel with their sixth sense, and he begins to laugh. He says this is it, mana which he could only faintly see before is becoming clearer. Something then shatters all of the mana around him, and he's surprised, wondering what the hell just happened. We hear some people saying that they're so bored and that their father is too busy speaking with the other nobles and that they've totally been brushed aside, and that they should just go show their faces and go to their rooms like they usually do, as it's two brothers. They are destroying the flowers as they walk to the garden, saying it's not their birthday, so they don't really care, and surely the young master of the Sogur's family doesn't care about it either. One of them says they got lost, and they wonder why this garden is so pointlessly big. They both spot Argrik in the courtyard, wondering if maybe he got lost too. They say that seeing as how he's dressed, he must be a servant, and that anybody's fine. Argrik turns around, and the two brothers tell him to guide them to the exit, and he says they need to get out of where they're standing right now, asking if they don't see what's under their shoes. The older brother asks what's wrong and if he's really upset they just stepped on some grass. He asks why they're ruining the flower bed instead of using the path. The older brother laughs, saying he's so cocky for someone so small, asking if he knows who they are. Argrik says yes, they're the dipshits ruining the flower bed. The older brother gets angry, asking who he thinks he's talking to when he's just a mere servant, saying that they are the sons of Count Tyron, a guest of this castle. Argrik recognizes the name, saying that Tyron was the noble who got captured after he defeated him on the battlefield, and he was a really irritating dude, like father, like son. The older brother says even if this is the countryside, surely he knows about House Tyron, as it's famous in the capital, and that his house can make someone like him disappear without a trace, so he better watch his mouth. Argrik realizes his words aren't going to work for this guy, and the older brother raises his fist, asking if he's crazy to glare at him like that. He goes in for a punch but is immediately met with a headbutt instead, which catches him off guard, and he begins to bleed out of his nose. The little brother calls out to him, and Argrik lands back on the ground as the older brother falls down. He sees the blood on his hand and begins to panic, which instantly turns into rage as he says he'll kill that bastard. Argrik begins to laugh, asking if he thinks he can, telling him to go ahead and try. The younger brother says they should take care of his nose first, but the older brother tells him to shut up. Argrik preemptively dodges as the older brother comes in for a swing, missing badly. He goes for a follow-up, which Argrik ducks under. Yet another swing misses, and Argrik says, looking at his sloppy footwork, he can tell this guy doesn't use weapons, which suggests he's either a mage or a summoner. The younger brother tries to get him to stop, but the older brother can only see red and continues to swing at Argrik, missing over and over. We see him sweating, saying that he's so fast he can't catch him. Argrik backpedals some more and thinks about the flow of magic he saw earlier. If he can harness that magic to his will, then he surely should be able to compress that force into a physical form. He sticks his hand out and begins to channel the mana into it, saying he wants to test it out. Suddenly, a bright light appears, and the younger brother is surprised. From Argrik's hand comes out a shockwave, hitting the older brother in the chest and sending him flying across the garden, destroying the terrain. He screams, and the younger brother quickly runs over to check on him. Argrik says he accidentally ruined the flower bed. The older brother catches his breath and sits back up, asking who he is because he didn't expect him to be able to use magic. The younger brother still tries to get him to stop, and the older brother tells him to get out of his way, saying he's going to kill that bastard. He starts to yell, saying, heed my call. As a reddish aura is seen forming around him, Argrik's surprised, saying he was a summoner after all. A purple portal appears and slowly begins to open wider. As a purplish dog steps out of it and starts to snarl at Argrik, the older brother laughs, asking how his summon is. We learn the dog's name is Jindapu. He says that he'll show him the consequences of messing with him, and we learn that the older brother's name is Digran. He tells his dog, Jindapu, to rip that bastard to pieces. Argrick says it's only a wolf-like summon, and it feels quite lacking compared to his sister Claire, who could summon a wyvern. The dog leaps at him, but Argrick doesn't even try to avoid it as he walks towards it. He looks directly into the dog's eyes, which causes it to instantly stop its attack, realizing something. It then turns, looking at its owner, who is completely surprised, then looks down nervously. Daigron asks what's going on and why Jindapu is acting like this. The younger brother says that for some reason, he's wagging his tail, and Daigron just wonders what the dog doing, telling his dog to attack him. Argrick pets Jindapu, calling him a good boy, and wonders how this happened, saying now that he thinks about it, even his sister Claire's summons are very friendly to him. However, he had simply thought that was due to his blood ties with her. Thus, in a situation like this, where there's no relation, it may be that he has very high favorability, but it could also just be that Daigron's favorability is at the very bottom. Daigron yells, asking how this makes sense and how a summon can betray their master. Argrick asks him if he would like to continue, and Daigron keeps yelling at him while his younger brother tells him that he would just like to leave. Daigron tells him to be quiet, saying he will cancel his summon, and his younger brother tells him that he actually made a mistake. Daigron realizes that Lil Bro straight pissed in his pants. Argrick tells them the bathroom is in the first floor of the basement, and Daigron grabs his brother's hand, and tells Argrick to wait right here, and we learn that the younger brother's name is Diener. Argrick watches them leave, saying he should at least take his dog with him. Some time later, we see Argrick saying that it's actually quite simple. It's just like how Claire taught him. The faint link between Daigron and Jindapu, after carefully overriding that magic with his own, it made Jindapu connected to him. To think that he, who hadn't done anything close to an actual summoning, just due to his high favorability, would succeed at it on his first try. We then hear an older man asking if that's the brat who bullied him, and Argrick turns to see a lard ass. We hear Daigron saying that's the bastard, and not only did he bully him and Diener, but he even cancelled his link with Jindapu. Jabba the Hutt introduces himself as Mogard Tyran, the head of the Tyran Count family, one of the capital's great nobles. He asks if he's the brat who made his son's face like this and forcefully took his summon. Argrick nods, saying that's right. He says that he even looks fatter than the time he captured him as a prisoner, and that peace must be doing this guy wonders. Mogard, as an invited guest, planned to let it pass if possible, but this is something that he absolutely cannot overlook, and he asks why he's alone in a place like this, telling him to reveal his identity. Argrick sighs, saying his name is Dane Sogers, the youngest son of Arkan Sogers, the Lord of the South and the head of the Sogers Count family. Both Daigron and Mogard are surprised that the kid they've been messing with is none other than the birthday boy. Mogard says that things have taken an unexpected turn, since he was taken prisoner by that guy Argrick. Despite not achieving anything during the war, he'll maneuver the situation in his favor so that the Count is held responsible and use that as a pretext to demand the mines. The nobles that look down on him will now bow before him. Mogard confirms that he's the birthday boy, and Argrick says yes. Mogard starts to get annoyed, calling him arrogant and says he didn't come to this backwater land just to celebrate his birthday. He puts his hand on Daigron, asking what he plans to do about this, saying he wounded his son, a guest that he himself invited, and even stole his summon, which is a grave crime. Daigron yells that's right and that today is his last. Bro is the worst hype man of all time. Mogard says that he's personally going to speak with his father and hold him accountable in his time to go. Argrick says he can practically see right through him. He understands, but before that, he expects an apology. Mogard's blood pressure starts to go up, and he asks what impudence and why he would give an apology. Argrick says it's true that he hit his son and hurt him, but he was only defending himself, and he didn't steal his summon, it just chose to follow him. Daigron says there's no way it would do that and that he is definitely lying. Mogard says he heard the Sogers' second daughter was a genius summoner, and now he understands how it is. There's a good chance that girl taught the boy how to forcibly cut off a link. He says even if what he said is right, it's only right to grieve a summon being stolen. Yet still, he is wanting an apology. Argrick says that's exactly right. Daigron laughs, asking who he thinks he is to act like that. Mogard calls him arrogant for talking back when his elders are speaking. He starts to sweat nervously, or maybe it's just because he's fat, and says even talking to this boy is making his jaw ache. He says he won't scold him any longer and they can go see what Count Sogers has to say about this. Argrick says he seems quite eager, and on cue, we see Arkan walking up and asking if he was looking for him. Both Daigron and Mogard are surprised, as even Thermion is with him too. Sometime later, we see Daigron explaining the whole situation to Arkan while Argrick sits there, saying it really is just like his father. He cares deeply about his family, but he's not the type to be biased towards anyone's side. Even in conflicts with outsiders, he can tell right from wrong. Daigren looks at Argrik and shows his nose plugged, saying all of a sudden he headbutted him and kept using a weird technique to mock him. Just to scare him, he called out his summon, but Argrik stole it from him and even attacked him. Argrik sighs, saying that given that he can lie with a straight face, he can't wait to see what future this guy has. Count Triple Chin calls out to Arkin, saying he only intended to give him a warning, but stealing somebody's summon is clearly not right, and he cannot let it slide. Arkin says they cannot stop at only hearing one side of this quarrel, and he would like to listen to what his son has to say and then assess the situation as a whole. If he's worried about him making a judgment on his own, he will request that Thermion also give his opinion. Thermion nods, saying if he needs him, he's okay with that. Mogard and his son start to sweat nervously, and he says that Thermion getting involved is just making it more complicated, and he starts to get a bad feeling. Arkin tells Argrik to explain himself. Argrik says that just explaining it should suffice. He says although it's a little different from what actually happened, some of it is true. The flowers that they grew with such care in their gardens were stepped on and destroyed without a care in the world by Daigren, and he only told him to get out. He got angry and grabbed onto his collar when he said that to him. Daigren says that's a lie, asking when he did such a thing. We see Arkin holding back his anger, telling him to continue. Argrik says he heard it very clearly, he summoned the dog, giving it the command to kill him, and that he didn't steal his summon. His summon came up to him first and saw his goodwill. Thermion is surprised that the kid can speak so well, and Argrik continues, saying that he never stole his summon in the first place. Mogard yells, saying this is nonsense, and it's impossible for a summon to submit to somebody who's not their owner, and he clearly used some sort of secret technique. Argrik says no, he just happens to possess an innate affinity with summons. A summon that is not close enough to its master could submit to somebody like him. Mogard asks if he's meant to believe this absurdity. Arkin asks if this is true. Argrik says yes. Mogard laughs, saying he's not seriously asking him to believe that, and both of their stories are different. Thermion says they could easily prove this with just a summon. Mogard's surprised that Thermion's butting in right now, and Arkin asks Argrik if he could prove it to them, and he says yes. Mogard looks down at his son, and Daigren makes an oh shit face, saying that he can't summon the dog and he doesn't know what to do. Mogard tells him to quickly summon it, but Daigren says that he can't. Mogard asks how he can suddenly not summon something he can usually summon several times a day, but of course, Argrik already severed the connection, so there's no way. Argrik says that he'll summon it right now, but in order to do that he needs a sign that he possesses. Daigren asks why he wants his sign, saying he can't believe that he's demanding that, calling it nonsense. He keeps yapping, saying even if he had it, there's no way he would be able to succeed with a summon. Arkin says if that's the case, there's no harm in trying, and it would actually prove his words true. Mogard says since he's not wrong, he can't really decline, and he tells his son to hand it over. Daigren begins to cry and tries to get out of it, but Mogard turns away, telling him to hurry up. We see Argrik imbuing his aura into the sign, and we learn that since a summon sign has a summoner's unique code engraved on it, no one else is usually able to use it. But the dog that Daigren summoned was imbued with his mana, and this summon sign is only a vehicle. The dog has already been connected with him, and it will surely answer his call as it does exactly that, and we see him petting it. It even begins to lick his face, and both Thermion and Arkin are surprised. Daigren asks his father how this is possible. Thermion says this is amazing, and he thought his son was meant to be learning spearmanship. Arkin says that's correct, and he's not sure what brought this up. Argrik apologizes for summoning the dog like this and thanks him for showing up. Mogard realizes things are getting worse and worse and that they need to do something. But before he can say anything, Arkin asks what they should do now, saying they've confirmed the situation. He asks if Mogard acknowledges that Dane was telling the truth. Mogard says it appears that they were mistaken in believing the summon was stolen, but his son wasn't really trying to kill Dane, asking him if that's right. Daigren sweats nervously, saying that he was just trying to scare him a bit, and he never wanted to kill him. Arkin and Thermion look like they agree, but Argrik is pissed. Suddenly somebody appears, saying it's not true, and they all turn surprised, even Argrik, as it's none other than Layla. Thermion asks Layla what she's doing here, and she says that she heard her voice during her walk. Then she greets both Arkin and Mogard. Mogard wonders if this is Thermion's daughter, and Arkin, still holding back his anger, asks what she meant by he lied. She says she actually heard their conversation during her walk earlier. Daigren realizes this is bad. Arkin asks if she would like to tell them what she heard. As she starts to explain it all, Argrik says he wasn't expecting this, but, thanks to her, things went smoothly. Mogard tells Daigrin to hurry up and apologize. Daigrin does that, but to Arkin, who says that he would like him to apologize to his son rather than him. Mogard then pushes Daigrin, saying he was just about to ask him to do that. Daigrin begins to step forward towards Argrik and feels embarrassed but still apologizes anyway. Argrik wonders if it's really apologizing if you're only lowering your head because you didn't have a choice after your third-party witness came forward. He doesn't really want to accept it, but based on his past experience, instead of being stubborn, it would be more beneficial for him to show generosity. So he decides to accept the apology and tells Daigrin that. Daigrin thanks him, and Mogard sighs, saying that was close. Thermion says that he knew he was special and that he could have been stubborn about it since the other party was in the wrong. Yet, he chose to be gracious. Arkin then says they can stop the little argument here since Dane accepted the apology. Personally, he has no intention of letting this incident slide. He turns back, saying that Daigrin still tried to kill his son with his summon. Mogard tries to cook up an excuse, but Arkin says he doesn't want to listen to it and that he should take his family and leave the castle. Mogard says this is bad, he came all the way here without complaint, and if he gets chased out now, it will all have been for nothing. He needs to stay here at all costs. Arkin grabs Mogard's hand and begs him to forgive him, saying he will do anything he asks of him and just this once to please forget about what happened. Arkin slaps his hand away, saying he has no need for him and that he will be sending soldiers to his room. He turns, telling Thermion it is time to go. Thermion nods his head and tells Layla they should get going. Argrik glances back, saying it served them right. They started this, so they are only reaping what they sowed. He didn't know his father could get so scary when he was angry. Thermion asks if it is really true that Argrik defeated Daigrin with a mana bullet. Argrik says yes, and Thermion says that on top of magic, he also has spearmanship and summoning, asking if there has ever been anyone this talented in history. Arkin laughs, saying he is certainly glad to have such an exceptional child. Layla asks if he is serious, and he nods his head, confirming it. Thermion says talent is one thing, but he sure is calm. Usually, when kids fight, they get agitated and insist they are in the right, but Dane doesn't, and he has no doubt that he will grow up to be a fine man. Arkin is happy about the praise, saying it is too early to tell and they have to wait until he is all grown up to be sure. He says that today's incident was resolved thanks to Layla. Without her testimony, it could have turned ugly. Thermion wonders if he sees his daughter in a good light and says that all she did was state things as they were, and maybe they should talk about marriage. Arkin realizes this is way too early and makes an excuse, saying it is almost time for the banquet and starts hauling Cheeks away, saying he will get ready. Thermion calls out to him and then tells Layla to take her time on her way back with Dane and chases after Arkin. We see them standing together, and she looks a bit embarrassed, saying there is no stopping her father. She asks why his summon ignored Daigrin and obeyed him instead, saying she has seen famous summoners duel many times in the capital, but she has never seen this. Argrik says he is not sure, but it just kind of happened. She says if he is hiding it, then that is no fair, even though she helped him. He says that he also helped her when he fixed her swordsmanship. She is smooth-brained and forgot and says that now that she remembers, he is right. He says that they should both just say they helped each other out once, and they can help out one more time. She gets excited, saying that is a great idea, and she wants to use it right now. He says that she is so impatient and wonders what she is going to ask. She asks him to teach her how to use Mana Bullet. He asks why she wants to learn it, and she says it is because she wants to grow quicker. She wants to make at least 2 mana cores before entering the academy. He wonders why she is so impatient again, despite being so young. She says that it is to make her mother happy, as her mother loves her a lot. She would be happy if she grew stronger quickly. Argrik says that he has heard the adults talk about it. How Thermion's wife is bedridden. He decides that he won't refuse her. She gets really excited, saying that they should start tomorrow and that she will be here until then. She says that they can start tomorrow or maybe tonight. He says that they can do whatever one she wants and that the Mana Bullet should not be too difficult once she understands the flow of magic. She says that she is excited and asks Dane what his request is. He looks over at her and starts to think about what he wants. But we don't get to hear it yet. We hear a bunch of the guests at the banquet talking about how Mogard got kicked out of the castle and they wonder what happened. Others inform them that it was all because of his son and that they picked a fight with Dane and got taught a lesson. They call him embarrassing. Apparently, there is a rumor that young Master Dane is also an outstanding summoner. Maybe House Sogers will now be a prestigious summoner house. They then add on that he also uses magic, and they ask how this is possible. We see a man greeting Dane, introducing himself as Baron Opened, asking if he knows anything about his territory in the east. Argrick says he does, and he heard that the territory is famously known for its grilled trout and sapphire. Opent laughs loudly, calling him a bright young man, saying that's right and that their trout and sapphires are the best on the continent. He heard that he was talented in many areas, and he guesses it was true. At any rate, his daughter is here as well, and he is sorry for introducing her so late, and he tells her to say hello. We learn that her name is Sylvia. She steps forward, and Argrick wonders what's going on all of a sudden as she introduces herself to him, saying it's nice to meet him. He awkwardly says yeah and introduces himself too. Then she quickly closes the gap, saying he's the one who's inheriting the Sogur's house in the future, asking if she's right, and he says that he doesn't really know. She tells him not to pretend that he doesn't know, saying she heard that he's talented in many ways, and she hopes he takes care of her, as it's possible they'll become family in the future. He wonders why these kids are all so weird. Layla sees them shaking hands and asks Dane what he is doing here. Sylvia gets surprised to see her, and then Layla starts to ask Argrick who she is in a creepy tone. He goes to say it, but instead, Sylvia beats him to it, introducing herself as the eldest daughter of Baron Opened. In an angry tone, Layla says it is really nice to meet her. Argrick says this familiar killing intent reminds him of how his sisters are constantly arguing as well, and women sure are scary. Layla puts her hand on Dane's arm, saying she will be borrowing him for a bit and asks if he remembers. He remembers he was meant to teach her, saying she is right and apologizes to Sylvia, saying they will talk later. She decides to take the L, saying that is too bad, but understands that she is saying that she called dibs on him. Of course, the daughter of a duke who holds the most power in the capital, second only to the emperor, versus the young lady of the Eastern Baron, it is clear which one would win in an arranged marriage. Layla asks Argrick how they are acquainted and if perhaps Sylvia is engaged to him. He says it is not like that, they just met for the first time. Her mood instantly changes, and she asks if that is the truth. He says yes. They head to an area that is overgrown, and he says this is the secret spot that only he knows about. She says she can't believe there was a place like this as she walks forward, her eyes are full of genuine curiosity, and she starts getting super excited, saying she didn't know this kind of place existed. She says that nobody will know if they practice here. He says that is right, which makes it a good place to train, and asks her if she has ever felt mana before. She says a little bit, but not enough to form a mana core, and that she has tried to intake mana by breathing it in. He realizes this might be a problem since she is not at the emission stage yet. Since he learned it naturally on the battlefield, he thought that a duke's household would teach her this. He says they should start with something easy. First off, she has to feel the mana that she intakes into her body. She asks him what he means, and he says that if she wants to expel mana, she first needs to learn how to control it, and the important part is the imagination. He tells her to close her eyes and imagine mana swirling around her, and then picture it swirling inside of her body like blood circulating through her veins. She clearly doesn't get it but says that she will do as he says. He explains to her that this action becomes the foundation for everything that she can do with mana and that it is the very basis of it. So he knows that she can do it. As she closes her eyes, she begins to try to lock in, focusing on feeling the mana. Argrick watches for a bit, and then she tells him that it is not working. He says that is normal for the first time, even if it is the basics. She should just focus again. We see Arkan peeping behind a tree, and he laughs, saying even at this young age, his son is already teaching somebody, and that he sure is growing up fast. Thermion jump scares him, causing Arkan to die on the spot from a heart attack, asking what he is doing here. Thermion looks down at him, telling him there is no need to be so surprised and asks if he's trying to catch a couple having a late-night rendezvous. Arkan asks what he means and how he got here in the first place. Thermion wonders if he intruded, saying that his wife is the Empire's legendary assassin, yet he hasn't learned a single thing from her, as all he did was use some sloppy stealth. Arkan says that he did his best in his own way. Thermion says if the castle's owner goes around peeping on others' affairs, they will speak ill of him. He asks what he means by peeping, saying he is only following his son. Thermion gets surprised, saying he also followed his daughter. Arkan sighs, saying he is hardly one to say it, but he is a hopeless parent. Thermion asks if he is only now figuring that out and that he wants to watch what they are up to as well. As we see Argrick opening his dimensional pouch that his sister gave him, Layla is surprised, asking where he got it. And he tells her that it was a gift from his sister. She says that she is jealous, as her older brothers stopped paying attention to her when they entered the academy. Argrick pulls out a mirror and puts it in front of her, and she asks what it's for. He says he brought it just in case it could help. She asks if it would even work, and he says it's easier to picture something in your mind while looking at a mirror instead of relying on imagination alone. She asks if that's really the case, and he says yes, and that she should get a full view of herself. She says okay and that she will try it. She begins to do it again, trying to feel the mana, and he smiles, saying she is being very serious. She starts to focus on her breathing, still trying to feel the mana. Thermion says it seems like Layla has taken quite a liking to Dane, and it's not common for her to open up like this. Arkan asks if something happened, saying she seems like a bright child. Thermion looks conflicted but says that she's only bright on the outside and he can't say the same for the inside. After her brothers left for the academy and with her mother bedridden, they haven't been able to spend time together like they used to, and it has led to her finding it difficult to open up to others. Arkan says that if he understands her situation, why does he act so cold towards her? He asks if it was that obvious, and he says that he's doing it on purpose. When he raised his sons, he showered them with attention and then grew to be spoiled rotten. Arkan says that's a bad way to parent. If he assumes that she'll be like that too, it's only going to hurt her. It's no wonder she asked Dane for help instead. Thermion says he still nags like he used to, and Arkan asks when he used to do that. Thermion clicks his tongue and asks if he'll be sending his son to the capital, and if he is, how about letting him stay in his castle? Arkan thinks about it, and we see that Layla said that she did it, and Argrick praises her. Arkan says that he'll do as Dane wishes, just as Arabella and Claire have done. However, if Dane says that he's going to the capital, he'll make sure to do as he says. Thermion says it'd be nice if he came as well. Arkan says he just wants to spar against him all day long. Argrick says he sure has gotten quite sharp. We see a squirrel, hybrid creature crawling up a tree, only to be surprised as Lily is standing there, watching all this from afar. She was wondering where they had snuck off to. She wonders why they're being so shameful about it. She sighs, saying indeed the love they have for the children holds a strange sway over the two of them, and she'll just pretend that she didn't see anything. Wholesome. Later, we see them walking on the streets, and Layla thanks Dane, saying that she thinks he's a real genius. She's heard people call her one a lot, but compared to him, she doesn't think she's much of one. He tells her this is only the beginning, and she'll definitely grow as well. Argrick looks around, saying it seems like the other two have left, talking about their parents. She asks if he's going to the academy as well, as that's where all of the Empire's geniuses gather. He says that he doesn't know yet, asking if he has too, saying that he can get pretty strong by training alone. She stomps her feet, calling him an idiot, saying that studying is not everything and that he needs to go there to form his noble faction. He needs to go there if he wants to form connections from a young age. He laughs, saying for a 7-year-old child, she's pretty knowledgeable in how the world works. He says that he knows, but he's not interested in going to the academy, as there are a mountain of books he hasn't read in the library, and he still has a lot to learn from his parents. She says that's true, but sometimes he'll surely want to play with the other kids, and she's heard that his older sisters are both attending the academy. He says she's persistent, and he'll go in the future if he feels like it. She says that he has to tell her if he does. She adds that when he visits the capital, he needs to visit her house and see what she's practiced as well. He says okay, and he'll send her a letter if he plans to go to the capital. Then she remembers something, asking when he'll tell her what his request is. He laughs, saying he'll tell her when he gets to the capital. She's surprised, wondering what it'll be. It jumps to the next day as we see their carriages being sent away, and Argrick and his family watch. He looks down at something in his hands, and we get a flashback to him asking Thermion what it is. Thermion says it's his birthday present, and he hopes he likes it. Argrick says that it looks valuable, and Thermion explains that the symbols of his house are revenge, the sword, and the blacksmith. The history of his house began with their progenitor, who was a blacksmith. Thanks to him, their house is the best forge on the entire continent. All of the Thermion-made weapons that guide the Empire were made in that forge. Argrick smiles, saying that he knows, as all the ores in the world can be found there, and all sorts of mystical weapons and artifacts are created in their forge. Thermion says if he goes to the forge and shows them that insignia, they'll create him a weapon of his choice. The insignia is basically a certified check that proves the honor and scale of whoever holds it. Arkan and Lily are surprised that he was given such a precious insignia, saying that it's something even the imperial family wants. Thermion pats Argrick's head, saying he should grow well and help his father. Argrick thanks him for the gift. Layla then waves goodbye to him, and Lily asks if he's sad to see her go off. He says yes, as she is his first friend. Lily says that when he goes to the capital, he'll be able to meet her again, and he needs to become even more handsome in the meantime to shock her. Argrik looks around, saying it's not like he can stay here forever, and he'll definitely go visit the capital and see her. Until then, he hopes she stays well. As Thermion's leaving, he says it's odd, every time he looks at Dane, he is reminded of that man. The warrior Argrik, who showed the ability of a triple-class warrior at a young age. If he were still alive, he would have become one of the Hexa-class knights of the Drenic Empire. These horses CGI'd or what? Thermion says that he hopes he can see Dane grow well. We get another time skip to a few days later. Argrik says he's feeding the egg every morning, and he wonders if it's maybe too early to hatch. This egg sure holds a mysterious power. Even if someone wasn't a summoner, if they could instill the egg with their mana and imprint themselves as the master before it hatched, then they could permanently control it. It only sticks around temporarily. He says the quality of his mana obviously needs to match with the familiars, and there are probably a lot of tricky conditions that have not been fulfilled yet. He's heard there are eggs that never hatch because their conditions are never met. He begins to imbue his mana into it, saying that he hopes that's not the case. He starts to experiment with the flow and strength of his mana, still having no reaction. After imbuing it for a bit, he finally gives it one last burst and puts it away, saying maybe hoping he would succeed in one go was too greedy of him. Hermann then asks him if he is ready, and Argrik says he's coming, but as he's leaving, he hears the egg resonating behind him, and he quickly turns around, saying he definitely heard something. Hermann enters, asking what he just heard, and Argrik says to give him a second as he needs to check the egg. He doesn't see anything or feel anything different, and he wonders if maybe he was mistaken, saying he got excited for nothing. Hermann asks if the egg showed a reaction, and Argrik says no, he thinks it was just his imagination. Back at the training area, we see him practicing his footwork, as well as his rapid movements with the sword. He dashes forward, practicing an X slash, only to thrust his sword again, leaping forward and practicing it once more, then transitioning into a downward slash, parrying with his other hand to end off his little demonstration of the sword. Hermann claps, saying it was amazing, asking him when he trained with it. Argrik said he only wanted to swing it around a little. Hermann says, as expected of the genius he is even talented with the sword. Argrik looks down at his reflection on his blade, saying learning how to use a new weapon was fun, and he wasn't able to hold a sword during that time since his father was watching, so he's glad he hasn't lost his touch. Hermann then tells him to have some snacks before continuing. Argrik thanks him and begins to eat it, saying it might be good to train his sword as well. It jumps to Arkan saying the same thing every year gets tiring. Still, they gained a lot during the last banquet, and he was able to confirm that many nobles are paying attention to the south, and that most of those nobles are hoping for a good relationship with them. Since the war ended, the south, with its good climate, it holds many things the nobles covet, and maybe their interests should have been more obvious. Still, those interests couldn't even be compared to the attention Dane received. The conflict with Mogard was outside of his expectations, but he calmly and logically explained the situation in front of the adults and even confidently proved his talent. He is too mature and wishes he could act a bit more childish like the other kids his age. His clock continues ticking down, and he says it will be time to go. He looks over at his spear, saying he wants to get Argrik to swing his dragon tail a little bit today. As Arkan makes his way to the training area, he hears somebody training and is surprised to see it's none other than Argrik, who is still swinging his sword around. He wonders why Dane is using his sword rather than a spear. Then he thinks about it, saying that Thermion must have said something to him, and he wouldn't be swinging the sword so shortly after meeting him otherwise. He starts to pay attention to the way Argrik holds his blade and how he uses his wrist to redirect it. Arkan is surprised to see how skilled he is with the sword. The strength he's displaying is something even those who train with the sword for their entire lives can't imitate. Argrik's too focused to even notice that he's here, and he wonders just when he learned this. Arkan says one thing is clear, though, he's talented with the sword as well. He then calls out to him, saying that he's been watching him and wants to know where he learned swordsmanship. Argrik realizes that he just exposed himself and thinks it might be easier to tell him the truth. He says that he didn't really learn it. Arkan's surprised, saying that must mean it's just straight talent and that it seems he has talent in everything. He says that if he were somebody else, he wouldn't have believed that a child could show talent in every single field, and he asks Dane if he's curious about the world. Argrik asks what he's saying, and Arkan asks if he's curious about the world outside the walls. His thoughts are that maybe this county is too small for his talent and that he'll be the one losing out if he continues staying here. Argrik says that it seems like his father's realized that he can't hold on to him forever and tells his father that he is curious. His father laughs and looks happy, saying that now they'll need to prepare him to go out into the world. Although it is regretful, he must listen to his son's desire. He stabs his spear into the ground, saying he's brought something a bit more special today. Argrik instantly recognizes it, and his father says it's the dragon tail that reacted to him on his first birthday. Argrik says he does remember the spear, and his father tells him to hold it while sticking his hand out, then drops it into his hands. Argrik instantly begins to feel a strong surge of power, as it resonates with him. He can't believe how much power there is in it. Arkan laughs, saying it's much stronger than when he was one and that nobody can blame him anymore. He will make his talent with the spear shine the brightest. He puts his hand on Argrik's shoulder, saying he is thinking of at least making him master the spear before leaving, so he should be ready. This spear will one day be his, and before then, he should grow strong enough to wield it with pride. Argrik says, of course, he will, but rather than the dragon tail, he will work hard to win the sword. Argrik wields his teachings with pride. Arkan laughs, saying, as expected of his son, and he asks if they should begin. Argrik says yes, and they start training, but we don't get to see it. Instead, we see Argrik lying on the bed, thinking about the outside world. It is something he's always been curious about, even during the days when he was roaming the battlefield. In his past life, all he knew was war, tidying camps, cleaning his weapon, eating bland food, and going to battle. The only way to escape was for the war to end or to die in battle. Those were the only two options. He couldn't even imagine living a life outside the battlefield. But now, in this life, the situation is entirely different. He doesn't know how his talent will be used, how the world will accept him, or what he can do in the world. But he has the opportunity to travel everywhere and accomplish anything. For only a while, he wants to stay and enjoy the warmth of this place. But thanks to his father's question, his thoughts have now changed, and he's determined it's time to go outside. We then hear Lily saying that it seems like he's finally made a decision. He's surprised that she was in his room and asks when she entered. She starts to laugh, saying not to worry, and that he was so deep in thought she didn't even hear him knock. He asks if that was really the case, and she says yes, and she heard from his father that he would be thinking about it. Asking if he is that curious about the world outside. He says yes, and that his father said it would be a waste of his talent to stay here. After thinking for a while, he's very curious about the outside, and he apologizes to his mother. She looks at him warmly and tells him not to apologize. He tells her that since his sisters aren't here either, if he leaves, then they'll be alone. She says that she's fine and that she understands just how amazing his talent is. Even if he didn't want it, the outside world would have called for him. She says it would be amazing if he could stay here longer with her, but the world won't let him, so he can do what he wants. He says that even if he leaves his home, he'll return often and tell her everything that he's seen. She thanks him and says that it looks like she'll need to prepare to send him out into the world just like Arkan. He asks what she means by preparation. She says that she was going to teach him tracking and go slowly from there. But it seems that she'll need to get him on board with setting and avoiding traps as well. He wonders if he's going to be receiving special lessons in assassination from his mother, like he is from his father's spearmanship. She continues to tell him everything that he's going to be learning, and he says he's going to be exhausted before he even goes outside. She says that she's super excited to teach him many things, and he says that he'll do his best to learn. She looks at him and smiles, and he says special lessons from his parents make him very happy. If he wants to go out into the world, he'll need to get himself ready, as there's going to be a whole lot of exploring to do. We start to learn more about Sogur's County, located in the southern region of the Altheon Empire. With its warm climate and abundant natural resources, it became a cornerstone of the empire, ensuring they wouldn't tire out during the war. Thanks to Count Sogur's magnanimous ruling, it was a region of peace and warmth. Finally, once the war was over, the few small rebel forces were apprehended as well. At last, an era of peace, which feels as if it will persist for eternity, has returned to the empire. No way this could be a flag, right? We hear some people talking about how young Master Dane visited the shops and that the eldest daughter of the shopkeeper fainted that day. Two girls are gossiping, and they can't believe the rumors are true. One of them says she heard that he becomes more handsome by the day and wishes she could see his face at least once. She heard that he hasn't been betrothed yet, asking if she should try. Her friend asks if she's crazy, telling her to wake up and reminding her that he's only 14. The original girl insists that from what she's heard, he doesn't seem like a 14-year-old at all. Her friend says she needs to be locked up. They talk about how tall he is, attributing it to Lily. Saying that one thing's clear, he could be mistaken for a 20-year-old. His handsome silver hair and green eyes would make her heart stop if she saw him. Her friend says she'll need to see him the next time he comes, asking when she thinks that'll happen. The friend informs her that apparently he visits the shops often. Now that she thinks about it, she heard this from the forest keeper as well, and that it might be easier for them to meet the forest keeper and go from there. Turns out we have another 7-year time skip, jumping to the county outskirts. Some birds fly away in the forest, and we see some wolves. We learn that this area is infused with ancient magic called the Forest of the Last Days. Here, Dane is executing the escape mission that his mother, Lily, had given him. We see him walking forward, then lifts his spear, or something, not sure. Looks down at a piece of cloth, noting that the direction of the wind is south. Since he saw the Cheryl spider here before, he'll need to go west. He says he only has 3 more hours and needs to get out before the sun sets. He quickly starts jumping from tree to tree, moving through the forest insanely fast to make up for lost time. He notes that one of the most important things in assassination is not getting caught by your enemies. During this period, Dane needed to avoid the traps and nets set up by his mother and escape from this forest, which houses all sorts of dangers. We see him land behind some trees, looking a little gassed out. He starts to regain his breath, saying he needs to breathe in the air around him, absorbing the mana and holding it before breathing out. While focusing on assimilating with his surroundings, the hidden traps begin to reveal themselves one after another. He notices some nearly transparent threads directly in front of him that fill the entire area and look like they'll activate as soon as they are touched. He stabs his spear into the ground, noting that it's the most basic mechanism, but that's also why it's the most dangerous. He rolls up his sleeves, saying it's a relief that this one is easy to disarm. Suddenly, he's surprised to see some giant-ass rat-like creatures on the trees. As they begin to crawl out from everywhere, turns out there are far more than he originally thought. We learn that they are called rustlets. He didn't expect them to be here, and they charge at him with frightening speed. He reaches back for his spear, thinking he'll need to deal with them quickly, but then considers that it will be more dangerous if he touches the traps in the process. He decides it can't be helped, he just needs to run in the opposite direction. We hear their screeches as they chase after him. He looks back to see how close they are and watches as they start breaking all of the traps his mother had prepared. That was his intention. Now that the traps are broken, needle-like objects start flying through the air, getting closer to the rustlets and eventually piercing them all, killing almost the entire pack instantly. His plan was to lure them into the trap, and now, with the traps disarmed, he says that it went as he wished, allowing him to deal with them without lifting a finger. Then he realizes there's one more left, charging directly at him and opening its mouth to bite. He quickly sidesteps the attack and says that it's actually really quick. The russet lands back on its feet and spits something out of its mouth, which Argrick isn't even sure what it is, but he understands that it's dangerous. He starts to twirl his spear, deflecting whatever it was away from him. He sighs out of relief, saying he can't waste his time here. He quickly charges forward, but so does the rat. As the rat gets close, Argrick quickly slashes his spear around, cutting the rat directly down the middle. He glances back for a follow-up, swinging once more, absolutely cutting this thing into chunks before the russet could even realize what happened. Why is bro fighting rats, and not like wolves? It jumps to some time later, and we hear Argrick panting as he's laying on the ground, saying that he thinks he's going to throw up, and at least he's safely escaped the forest. He starts to get a weird feeling, then grits his teeth, wondering if there's something else here, and jumps up, saying that he should not let his guard down. Only for him to be surprised that it's none other than his mother, who says impressive. A total of 3 hours and 30 minutes, and that he was faster than she was. He asks if she was watching the entire time, and she says of course, and she couldn't leave him alone after all, and that she knows his talent better than anybody, but as a mother, it's a little different. He says he understands, but Lily says that he did very well and she couldn't find a single fault, asking if he was hurt at all, and he tells her no, that he's actually fine. She says that he'll end up being scouted as an assassin at this rate, and then pulls out an Assassin's Creed hidden blade, telling him to take this, as it'll fit him more than it fits her. He recognizes it as her dagger, Nighthorn, asking if it's okay to have it. She smiles, saying of course, that she won't be using it anyway, and that Nighthorn was created from the mysterious ethereal ore. The ore can take the elements of the object, and if he wishes, he can store all the poisons in the world. Argrick looks at his reflection on the blade, saying that he knew that it could mix the ore poisons and use them as one, and then he thanks his mother saying he'll treat it well, and she asks if he's ready to go home. He sighs, saying he guesses that's all the training he can get from his mother, but then they hear a very loud scream, and they're both startled by it. He asks his mother if she heard it too, and she says she did, and it seems like somebody else is in the forest, and then they quickly head over. It jumps back to Sogur's County, and we are now in the Annex Tower. We hear somebody panting, and he jolts up out of his bed, sweating a lot. He asks where he is, saying he was definitely eating mushrooms in the forest. The door opens, with Argrik asking him if he's awake, saying that he's still being detoxified, so please do not move. The man wonders what's going on, asking if he saved him. Argrik says yes, as he ate a red-nosed mushroom. Fortunately, they found him in time. The man is surprised after hearing the name, and Argrik warns him that it's a very dangerous mushroom, and if they were even a little late, he would have been a corpse, and hands him a glass of water to drink. The man thanks him, and then starts chugging it. Argrik says that his belt had the insignia of the Nixion Magic Tower, so he's not an ordinary person. If it wasn't for Nighthorn, he definitely would not have been able to save him. The man then asks him where he is, and Argrik tells him that he's in the Sogur's County Annex Tower. The guy sighs after hearing the name, saying that he didn't just get lost in the southern region, but he was poisoned by the mushroom and walked all the way here. Argrik says that he should just rest, as he's informed his father, and he'll come to see him soon. The man asks who his father is, and Argrik tells him that he is the youngest son of Count Sogurs and introduces himself. The man laughs, asking if that's really the case, saying that means he is the younger brother of Arabella, and that he is the genius being eyed by all of the magic towers, and he asks him how he found him. Argrik says in truth that he was training with his mother in the forest. The man asks if he's serious, saying that forest is crazy. Even as an 8-chain mage, he lost his way, and his flow of mana got reversed while spellcasting, and his body was in ruin. He asks Argrik if it's really true, saying the entire forest holds ancient mana, and that there are traps everywhere. Argrik laughs, saying that's right, and the forest is his property, and it's a dangerous place for anybody who isn't a member of the Sogur's house. And also, since the flow of mana is different from what modern mages use, it is the worst place for a mage to be, and he was in grave danger, on top of that, due to eating the shroom. The man sweats nervously, saying that he can't believe he almost just died. Then he realizes something, asking how this boy is already strong enough to train in that forest, and he asks if he's the one who made the antidote as well. Argrik says he is, and the dude is completely baffled, saying he looks like he's in his teens, but yet he formulated an antidote that requires extensive knowledge and precise production skills. He laughs internally, wondering how such a family can exist, on top of those two generational geniuses. Even the youngest son is something crazy that he can't fathom. If they were still at war, then this county may have become the most powerful noble house within the Altheon Empire. The man laughs, saying that he is greatly indebted to him, and Argrik says he indeed is. The man says he can't believe this kid's so bold. He adds that he'll definitely pay the debts back and would like to introduce himself. He says that his name is Sidrain Gauze, and not too long ago he was the head of the Nixion Magic Tower. He asks Argrik what he wants, saying he stays strapped. Argrik says he must be referring to a subspace, noting that there are plenty of mages who survive without a home by placing everything in it. Sidrain wonders why he's so relaxed, saying that he told him he was the head of a mage tower, and normally people are surprised or humbled, but this kid's not fazed at all. He says that he won't have a chance like this ever again, and there's no need to hold back, he can just tell him whatever he wants. Argrik thinks about it with his yee-ass cut, and Sidrain starts to smile, waiting for what he has to say, only for Argrik to say he needs more time to think about it. Sidrain wonders why he's so indifferent, questioning what is wrong with this kid. Argrik then turns, saying that he'll let him get some rest. He closes the door, and Sidrain sits there awkwardly, saying that he was the first person to ever treat him this way. He was thinking of taking his leave after staying for a day or two, but that won't do, and he'll need to have a closer look at him. It then jumps to later, as Herman is saying that if he's the head of a mage tower, he must be skilled as hell, and from what he's heard, he is an 8-chain mage, which means he is higher than Lady Arabella. Argrik says, yes, he is. Herman says that means a powerful figure is indebted to him, and that magic towers function as independent territories of this continent, like a nation. Argrik says he never thought he'd have been such an influential person, and Herman wonders what the head of a magic tower all alone in the forest. Argrik says that place is no ordinary forest, and it's what mages consider a forbidden area. They call it the Forest of the Last Days. Herman says that it would definitely pose a challenge even for mages, but he's fortunate enough to have lived thanks to Argrik. Argrik looks down at his blade and thinks about something, telling Herman he would like a new sword. The one he's using now is all lightweight and short. Herman says that those were all the spoils of war that Count brought back, and he'll prepare a longsword for training tomorrow. Argrik thanks him, saying he'll wrap up today with this one. Then he remembers something, saying that Thermion told him that he would craft him whatever he wished, and it's already been 7 years since that day. He begins to smile, saying if he goes to the capital, he will absolutely visit him. Outside, Arkan says that it looks like he's training incredibly hard today as well, and Argrik says of course. He thought he had matters to attend to outside of the castle, but since he's here, it means he's returned early. Arkan says things wrapped up earlier than expected, and he had a reason to hurry home. Argrik asks if it's about the head of a magic tower. Arkan says more or less, and that maybe he could be of help to Arabella and even a good master to her. Argrik says he was thinking the same thing, but he's not sure if he could handle her temperament. He heard that she punched one of her seniors because he annoyed her. Arkan says in any case, he did well in saving another person's life, and Argrik tells him he just did what he had to. Arkan smiles proudly, saying it's not something that anybody could have done, and what he did was actually amazing. Argrik then asks his father if his sisters are unable to come home this time. Arkan says he has no idea, and it's difficult to even catch a glimpse of their faces. He has heard that Arabella has just finished up her extended semester and is joining a magic tower soon, and he heard Claire received a request from her professor to take up the role of assistant professor. Argrik laughs, saying they're both so impressive. Arkan says that it's true they are, but he has high expectations of Argrik too, and he wonders how the world will handle him with all of his talents. Ahem, his plot armor. Argrik says he wonders too, and Arkan says the thought of catching Thermion off guard already has him laughing. Argrik thinks about how he fought him back on the battlefield, and he ended his life, but he can't wait to fight him again. He wonders how Layla is doing, saying that her last letter came around maybe a year ago, and he guesses he'll figure out when he goes to the capital. It jumps to a few days later, as Sadrain is yelling, asking how he's not fully recovered yet, saying he's going to go crazy from staying in this room. Somebody's talking to him, saying that he shouldn't venture out far, and he is also forbidden from using magic. Since his reflux has not been purified, and the poison in his body has yet to be fully nullified, he will have to wait longer. Sadrain says if he puts it like that, he has no choice, and it's been a while since he was last unable to use magic, so this might be a good change of pace. But he can't stand being here any longer and wants to go out. The man sighs, saying he doesn't even know his way around here. Sadrain leaves anyway, and the guy says if he stirs up trouble, he supposes he'll be the one suffering. We overhear some maids talking about how mages are either geniuses or nutcases. They say that Sadrain went up and down every single floor of the building multiple times, and now he's even spending hours looking at the flowers in the backyard. One of them says that he's meant to be an incredibly powerful figure among the mages, and she wonders what's going on. The other girl says, so what if he is? He's completely nuts, and that Arabella needs normalcy and her life is not this nutcase. Back at the garden, we see Sadrain actually admiring it, saying he wanted to craft this. He never would have guessed that these flowers possess such extraordinary mana. Argrik then drops by, saying he wanted to see how he was doing, and he couldn't find him in his room. Sadrain laughs, asking if he thought he ran off somewhere, saying that he was told to stay here until he fully recovers. Argrik nods his head, saying that's what he wishes for as well. Sadrain says that in any case, this region is a perfect place for him to recover, and he can see why nobles come here once vacation season hits. Argrik says it's an amazing place, and it's quite a shame that he has to leave soon. Sadrain asks where he's going, and Argrik says that he's going to the capital. Sadrain says if he's going to the capital, that means he is going to the academy. He knows that his sisters are there too. Argrik says they are, and Sadrain says that means he'll have an easy life. Since his sisters are famous for having a lot of talent, he wonders how much Argrik has, and he decides to take a look. He starts to analyze his mana and feels how dense it is around his core, and he's surprised that it's so thick, saying that this is crazy dense. If geniuses his age could be considered a stream, then this boy is closer to a raging rapid, and the amount of magic would normally be so unstable it would be bursting out. Argrik asks him if he doesn't think that assessing another person's magic without permission is a bit rude. Sadrain is surprised he could tell, saying he's got quite the skill, and he apologizes, as that was thoughtless of him. But he still can't get over how thick his mana is, saying he has never met anybody in his entire life with such dense mana. Argrik just wonders what he has seen that has surprised him so much. Then Sadrain wonders why he's not seeing a magic circle, saying with that kind of density he should be able to see one. He then gets even more surprised, saying that it can't be, as he now understands that Argrik has 2 mana cores and asks how he was able to form them. Argrik asks if there's something wrong with that, and Sadrain says, of course there is. He possesses such a crazy density of mana, yet he really plans on wielding a spear. To think this kind of magic comes from just cores alone without circles, he's voluntarily turning his back on the greatest talent the world has ever seen. Argrik asks why he can't just use the both of them. Sidrain's face starts to crinkle up, and he yells, asking where in the world he should even start by explaining this. He asks if he knows why the lifespan of a magic swordsman is so short. He says they are powerful because they possess both mana cores and magic simultaneously. However, cores and circles interfere with one another. When they clash, a problem arises. It's a law of sorts. The mana compressed in the core is transmitted to the circle, so if a circle that cannot handle the result of their clash will burst. Argrik says he figured out that much by himself and wonders if it's really impossible. Sidrain continues nagging, saying that it's such a waste of talent. Argrik asks if it's truly impossible to use magic without a circle, and Sidrain says it's not impossible without a circle's refinement, but he asks how he's going to be able to use spells that require purified magic. He says it's not like there's been nobody before him with the same thoughts. However, the majority of attempts he has seen have failed. Argrik thinks about it and then asks if he should try it. He hasn't tried it before, but it seems like it should be possible. Sidrain is confused, wondering what the hell he is saying. Argrik says that if he rearranges the magic code, as he moves his hand around in the air, guiding the mana to where he wants, we see magic runes starting to float. He then clenches his fist, punching it upwards, and opens his hand as an explosion of fire magic comes out. He smiles, saying that it's only at the level of a basic one-chain spell. Sidrain is just confused, asking how the hell this is possible, saying he clearly has no magic circles, so how is he using magic, and that this is completely unbelievable. He should only be able to use raw magic through the refinement of a circle. Argrik then stretches his hand out to his side as a barrier appears, and he says that Arabella told him that his affinity for magic is high, and maybe that is the reason. Sidrain is shocked that he can make a barrier as well, saying even so, and he wonders if this is what commoners mean when they describe gifts that are impossible to imitate, aka an innate talent. Argrik is also a little surprised that it actually works, saying now this means he can use magic without a circle. Sidrain's legs start to shake as his heart rate increases, and he says, along with mana purer and denser than anybody else in the world, and his innate mana affinity, this boy is the real deal. He sits there seeing Argrik smirking in his barrier, and he asks if he would consider becoming his disciple. Then it jumps to him yelling, saying to wait, and we see Argrik walking away as he is saying that he just wants to talk to him, and ignoring such an incredible talent would be a real shame. He gets in front of him, asking if he knows how to use two-chain magic. Argrik sighs, saying he doesn't know the code, so he can't. Sidrain laughs, saying that's great, and if he becomes his disciple, he could use 8-chain magic immediately. Argrik gets annoyed, saying that he doesn't plan to, and Sidrain also starts to get angry. We then see Arkan walking forward and laughing, saying that he didn't realize he had gotten so close to his son already. He asks Argrik what the two of them were discussing. Argrik says that he kept asking him to be his disciple and he refused. Argrik quickly jumps to telling Arkan how much talent his son has and that he could become a great mage. Arkan laughs, asking if that's really the case, and Sidrain says that it's probably even greater than he can imagine. He even succeeded in using chain-level magic without a circle. Arkan's surprised, asking if that's really true. Argrik says yes. Arkan laughs, saying that he's pretty sure he had no basic knowledge of magic, and Sidrain says that's exactly why it's so impressive. He and Arkan both start to laugh together, and Arkan says, as expected of the former head of the magic tower, he could immediately see his son's talent. Sidrain says it's not a matter of simply having talent, his son is a genius, and he could even be a rare magic swordsman. Arkan then gets a vision of Argrik wielding his sword high up into the sky and shouting that the sword is better than the spear, and he instantly realizes that is not what he wants and asks what he means by magic swordsman. Argrik realizes this is bad, as it's a word that should never be brought up in front of his father, but Sidrain doesn't recognize this and continues laughing, saying that's right. He asks if he's finally interested, saying that if he becomes his disciple, he'll take full responsibility for turning him into the Empire's top magic swordsman. Sidrain then realizes that the atmosphere started to get colder and wonders what happened as Arkan starts screaming, saying he cannot become a magic swordsman. Sidrain asks why not, saying that a swordsman paired with magic is something that he seems to be uniquely suited to, and Arkan yells that his boy won't become a magic swordsman but instead a magic spearsman. Sidrain wonders if that was the only issue, as Argrik sits there sweating nervously and Arkan just looks angry, and he wonders why everyone in this family is a psycho. Argrik starts to explain that to a mage, becoming a disciple carries great meaning. Mages normally raise successors through the act of something called inheritance. The tradition has carried through from ancient times, and is still practiced, even in modern times when universal magic education has become established. In simpler terms, what Sadrain is looking for is not a disciple but a successor, and given how he keeps hanging around him nagging him, it means that his talent is truly something incredible. After hearing so many compliments, Argrik does sense something swirling in his body. Then he realizes something, saying that he still has that thing. We get a flashback to Arabella telling him that when he wants to see her, he can just try pouring his magic into the crystal ball, and he decides to open his closet and pull it out, saying that he can just ask her himself. It jumps to the library of the academy as we hear his voice, and we see her writing something down. She then realizes that he is talking to her, stops writing, and is happy to hear that he is reaching out to her. She's then surprised that Dane used a one-chain spell, saying that he doesn't even have a magic circle. He says that he knows, but it worked when he tried. She says that she knew his affinity was high, but she never expected it to be this high. He explains that the circle only takes care of circulation and purification. Maybe it's just that his mana is already pure. She tells him that sounds exciting and that they'll need to test this. She says that she'll send a mana stone to the transmission machine in his room, asking if he could pour some of his mana into it. He says yes and that he's glad he is his older sister and wanted to learn a bit about his mana anyway. Hearing her say that she'll help him reassures him since she's a 6-chain mage. She says that if he's already using chain level magic, he'll probably receive a lot of attention in the academy. He quickly says that he'd rather not draw attention to himself, and she says that there's no way he can avoid it as talent always draws the attention of others and that if anybody tries to bully him, she'll destroy them. He then says that now that he thinks about it, he heard she broke the nose of that male student who was getting all friendly with her, the second son of the Dwell Duchy. She gets annoyed, saying don't even talk about that bastard, as the other students look at her worried. She clears her mind, saying even without a magic circle, with enough time he can achieve great things. She wonders if his mana's purity will continue to increase. He says that he doesn't know, and she says that they should take a look into it. We then hear somebody yelling for her, saying that the professor is looking for her, and she tells him that she has to go and she'll contact him later. He says okay and that he'll see her later, and before she hangs up, she says that she'll send him the magic stone soon. He thinks that he might be forging a path that has never existed before. He never thought his mana was this pure, and he wonders if maybe there's a dragon heart inside of him or something. Back to Sadrain, who is sighing, saying that he's going to die. He used mana to confirm his status, and his condition only worsened. He thought he'd be able to leave soon, but now he knows that he won't. He grits his teeth, saying if only Argrik accepted his offer. He wonders what he has to do to get him on his side. Maybe he can offer a grand artifact or the inheritance magic passed down to him from previous generations, but he says those are all too much, and if he gets scammed after that, he won't have anything left. Argrik then knocks on his door, asking if he's inside. Sadrain is surprised, wondering if he is here to apologize or perhaps he changed his mind. He tells him to enter, and Argrik says he came here because he has something to tell him. Sadrain asks what it is, and then starts to get the wrong idea and laughs, saying that he knew he would become his disciple. Argrik says no. Sadrain asks what else he'd be here for since he said he had no interest in magic, and Argrik says it's not that he has no interest. Sadrain continues, saying that surely he should be his disciple then, asking if maybe he has a master already. Argrik says he doesn't, and Sadrain wonders if he's playing with him, asking if it's not for any of these reasons then why is he here to see him. In Argrik's mind, it's because he doesn't know the rearrangement code for 2-chain magic and it's difficult to learn from his sister since she's so far away. So the best method for him to learn would be none other than Sadrain, since he owes him for saving him in the forest, and he won't be able to refuse him. He tells Sadrain that he doesn't want to walk the path of only a mage. Sadrain asks if that means he's really going to be a magic spearman. Argrik says no, he's going to be a magic spearman assassin summoner. I am never saying this sentence ever again. Sadrain asks if something like that even exists, and Argrik says he'll add swordsman to that as well. Sadrain wonders what kind of shit he just heard, and says that this is frustrating. He asks if he's still refusing him, knowing that he'll never get the chance to be his disciple again. Argrik says yes, and Sadrain sits there thinking about it, saying that he seems very set in his ways. But then he gets an idea, asking if he might be interested in a letter of recommendation. Argrik asks where to, and Sadrain says that he heard that he wants to enter the academy, and if he writes him a letter of recommendation, he'll be able to start off with a great reputation. Argrik puts his cup down, saying that now that he thinks about it, it's not a bad offer, and he agrees. Sudrain then says now they can talk, and Argrik asks if he could make another request. Sudrain laughs, saying he's finally changed sides, and he'll start with this and secure his grip on him. He proudly says that he can ask for anything, and Argrik asks for the rearrangement code for 2-chain magic. Sudrain says of course, as he knows the code for all 2-chain magic in existence. Argrik thanks him, and Sudrain laughs, saying don't mention it as this is not much. He says that he can tell Argrik is still young, as a letter of recommendation for the academy and the rearrangement code for 2-chain magic is nothing. Sudrain says that this should begin their cooperation, and although he's not in the best condition, this much is nothing and that they can start right now. Argrik says that would be for the best. Internally, Sudrain is laughing, saying that he reeled in a huge catch. Argrik says that with this, he'd say he repaid him for saving him in the forest, and Sudrain's confused. Argrik says that he said it himself, since he owed him, he could ask for anything. Sudrain is annoyed, asking about him becoming his disciple again, and Argrik says that he's already told him multiple times that won't be happening. Sudrain then says that he was tricked by a child who was only 14 years old, saying that he asked for 2 things, and he only owes him for 1. Argrik says he doesn't think that's the case. First, he saved him from the forest, and second, he nullified the poison. Sudrain realizes he's right, and Argrik says he wanted to add the fact that he carried him here on his back, but he let that one go as a bonus. Sudrain feels utterly defeated, asking how such a daring child could exist in this world, and he says that his back is starting to hurt. It jumps to the training area with both of them dressed up. Sudrain says that it can't be helped. If he continues to curry favor with him, he may change his mind in the future, and it would be too much of a waste to give up on his talent and magic power. It's not a problem that he made a core instead of a circle. The important part is that he used chain-level magic without a circle. Sudrain says the rearrangement code for the 2-chain magic that he will now explain is very complicated, and many people would give up as they can't do it, so he needs to focus and listen well. Argrik smiles, saying okay, and Sudrain says that his eyes look full of confidence, but he's definitely going to make this as hard as he can, as he won't be taken for a fool. Sudrain says that 2-chain codes are on an entirely different level compared to 1-chains, and it's because you need to calculate the amount of mana yourself, such as the density of the mana floating in the atmosphere and even the state of your body all at the same time. The reason most people give up on magic is because of this, as it's very complicated. He then starts to think that Argrik's definitely confused and has no idea what he was talking about and says that he'll definitely ask him to explain it in simpler terms. So he clearly says that that is the basic explanation, asking if he understands. Argrik nods, saying he did. And it was great to learn not only about the rearrangement code of magic but also information he had no idea about. Sudrain's just confused, asking if he really understood all of that. I guess there were some parts that weren't shown. Argrik says the first law is coexistence. Magic power could exist with the physical world and with other sources of mana. Through coexistence, mages use their own magic power and the magic power around them to activate their magic. The second is conservation. Sudrain is stunlocked, saying that he can't believe he understood the nature of magic, and he's even adding his own interpretations to what he believes for the magic laws. Most people would find this boring, but that doesn't seem the case for him. He wonders how somebody like this even exists. Sudrain explains that every time your chain increases, the code also becomes even more complicated. Rather than explain it, he would rather demonstrate. Mana begins to swirl around his hand, and he puts up a grid, saying that this is 1-chain magic and it can be cast using simple rules. However, from anything more, it'll get more complicated to the point that it isn't even comparable. The grid slowly starts to get magic runes on them as it shifts into a completely different form, and he says this is the rearrangement code of 2-chain magic. Argrik says they're knotted in complicated ways, and it feels more difficult than in theory. Sudrain asks how that is, saying this is the code that forms the 2-chain fire magic called Fire Arrow. If he wants more of them, he'll need to use the same code many more times. Sudrain thinks that now he's got him, as he's never seen this type of rearrangement code before. He's definitely confused, so he asks him if he thinks it's complicated. He says that most people take at least a year after they can freely use 1-chain codes before they can start using the 2-chain codes. He smiles, saying no matter how brilliant he is, he'll only be able to understand a portion. But the important thing is the rules. If he can't figure that out, nothing else matters. He'll observe him for about a week and slowly teach him the technique. Argrik puts his notebook away, asking if he should try as well. Sudrain is a little taken aback, saying it'll be difficult, but he sure can try if he wants. Argrik spreads his feet apart, saying okay. And then Sadrain's surprised, as Argrik instantly starts to get the mana to flow around him. Then his eyes open widely, as we see all of the mana swirling around his hands. He has put up the grid for the Chain 1 magic, just as Sadrain did. Asking if this is right. Sadrain says that's really impressive, saying that 1 chain magic must be really easy for him. Argrik says now he'll show him what he just demonstrated to him. The magic begins to form with the runes, just as it did before, turning into the 2 chain magic. Sadrain doesn't even know what to think anymore, saying he's perfectly replicated the rearrangement code he just showed him, asking if he really understood it after only seeing it once. He asks Argrik how he did it. Argrik says that he observed it, but he also memorized the rules and patterns. And when he formed the magic with them in mind, it wasn't that difficult. Sadrain says this is truly remarkable. Even he, as a magic genius, took a while to get to 2 chain. Not the wrapper. And that this boy is able to materialize it without even a circle. Argrik says that he'll also try fire arrow like he showed him earlier. Sadrain asks if he's serious. And we see the magic slowly starting to get brighter and brighter. He starts to spread it around, kind of like the webs his mother did in the forest. He then looks confident as we see fire arrows actually beginning to form from the magic. Sadrain says that he never expected him to be able to do this so easily, and that this is nonsense. If he had his talent, he would have been able to obtain his dream level of 9 chain. Argrik asks if he's doing it right. Sadrain says yes, and it's very impressive, and that he seems to be very quick to learn everything he tells him. Argrik says that it surprised him too that he could do it in one go. Sadrain says the world is going to lose their shit when they see him, and he needs to thoroughly hide his talent. All sorts of people will try to get closer to him and bother him, and that he should keep them away until he becomes his disciple. He asks if he would like to rearrange a different code. Argrik says yes, and Sadrain says he'll need to think about how he'll write that letter of recommendation to the academy. That night we hear Argrik saying that the magic lesson was way more fun than he expected. Theory and practice are both things that he'll need to learn properly, but since he can use magic, it's something that he never could have even dreamed about. As in his previous life, he was in a spot where he was never given the opportunity, since he was constantly moving battlefields, fighting for his life, trying not to die. So magic was not a luxury that he could afford, as all he could do was simply swing his sword. Because magic, up to a certain point, prioritizes theoretical learning over spellcasting. And it makes him really look forward to what the future holds. Combining the theory he learned from his sister with his natural-born talent, he's able to show explosive growth with even just simple guidance. And since he's even being taught by a former tower master, it's just accelerating even faster. He wonders what magic he's going to learn tomorrow. We get another time skip of a half a month, and then we get a magic lesson. We hear Arkan asking if they really plan to make a magic reagent. Sadrain says yes, but he doesn't have the material, so he needs to leave the castle. Arkan asks why they need it so soon, and Sadrain says that it's because Argrik has already learned 4 rearrangement codes already. Arkan says that he heard it usually takes around a month for 1 code and that magic reagents shouldn't be easy to come by. He asks Argrik where he learned about them. Argrik says that he learned about them while reading the books on magic in the library, and they caught his interest. Sadrain laughs, saying geniuses sure are different, and he never expected him to become so curious, as too many people find them boring. But for him, he'll have fun just picking the materials out as well. And he guarantees it. Arkan smiles and nods his head, saying that this will be a great experience for him to explore more of their county. Argrik smiles as well, saying yes, father. It jumps to outside as we hear horses on the street and we see them riding away with Herman behind them all, and all the citizens are trying to give Argrik snacks. Argrik says that he hopes everybody's doing well and he'll come back for the snacks later. Sadrain looks around, saying it doesn't seem like Count Sogers is a cruel lord, and judging by how he treats him, he knows that's true. He says that there are lots of good stuff down here in the south, delicious snacks, great weather, and good people. It's a sight that would be difficult to see in the capital. Argrik says that's right, and it's really warm here. Sadrain asks how much longer until they reach the magic supply shop, and Argrik says he's not sure as he hasn't been there before. Then he tells Herman to guide them from here, and Herman happily obliges. He rides in front of them, saying it's not too far from here, and they start heading off. They finally reach the magic supply shop, and we hear a woman surprised that Dane is actually here. She says, just as the rumors say, his silver hair and emerald eyes are stunning. He thanks her for the compliments and asks how business is. She says that the same as usual, there aren't many people coming up to buy magic supplies, and she's been selling things to foreigners or people who have a slight interest in magic. To see the previous lord of the Nixion magic tower certainly is a pleasure. Argrick says that he's surprised she recognized him so fast, but it makes sense. There's only a few magic tower heads within their empire. She bows, telling them to feel free to look around, and if there's anything he wants, she'll look for it. Sadrain says that since it's his first time in a supply shop, he should look around as much as he wants, and he wants to talk to the owner for a bit. He says okay, and we see that it's actually full of hella cool stuff, and even Argrick agrees. There's also some strange stuff, and he says that he's starting to get some kind of deja vu. Then he starts to feel the mana swirling around some of the objects. He says if he touches the supplies, he can see their magical reaction and smiles, saying it is probably due to his high magic affinity. He then surprises himself as he starts to hear a ringing sound, and he looks around, wondering where it's coming from. He looks to his right, saying it's coming from that direction, and he wonders what it could be. He then starts to walk over, and the shop owner tells him that their old decorations are items. He asks if that's really the case, what the hell is wrong with his lips? Sadrain asks why he doesn't come over here and look at some of the actual ingredients for the potions, saying that moon root should be good as a basic one. She tells him that's an excellent choice, and there are at least 50 different potions that can contain moon roots, and she personally processed these so they're high quality. Argrick turns back towards them, saying he still finds it strange, and he starts to feel the ringing again as it's louder. He surprises himself, instantly turning his gaze back towards it to see a stone shining off on a shelf. He runs over to it, trying to figure out what it is. Herman asks him what's wrong. Argrick says he feels something from the stone, and Herman says he thinks it's just decoration. Argrick says he's not sure himself, but the stone is definitely unusual. He picks it up, saying that he figured if he even viewed it with magic, it would become stronger, and it does. He wonders if it's only reacting to his magic. The shopkeeper is still telling Sadrain that he has a good eye and this is a perfect sample, and Sadrain says with this and a couple of other items, it should be good enough. Argrick then calls out to her, asking what this is. She turns, asking where he got the stone from, saying that everything back there is just decoration. He's confused, there's no way a decorative piece would have a magic reaction. The woman says just thinking about it makes her frustrated. Sadrain asks if somebody scammed her with it, and she says a few years ago, some peddler gave it to her as payment. She thought it was a better piece, but it was in a package and hidden. She didn't know what it was until she opened it, only to see a stone. The guy suddenly left, and she wasn't sure what it was, so she took it to a mage to get it appraised. In the end, she said it was a stone, and she thought it was a better one. In the end, it was just a rock. Argrick says that it's strange, it's clearly not a normal rock. The woman says if he's looking for something good, he should go over on the other side. She has a few special magic artifacts and she'll show them to him. He says okay, and she shows him a name card scroll, but Argrick isn't really that interested, saying that although there's a lot of good stuff, what he's most curious about is this piece of stone. She tells him that if he puts the name card scroll in this device, it will automatically read and store whatever is on it, and all he needs to do is say a person's name and then their card will show up. He says that he'll take that along with the stone, and she asks why he wants such a useless item. But he is sure this is an object he can't just leave here, and Sadrain asks what he intends to do with it. Argrick smiles and nods at him but doesn't answer his question. Outside, on their horses, Sadrain says he didn't know that he was interested in decoration, asking if there's something special with the stone. Argrick laughs, asking if he noticed, and Sadrain says, of course, it's strange for him to buy a useless decoration. Argrick says that's correct, and that's actually not just a decorative piece, it's responding to his magic. Sadrain says he's not sure what that stone is either, but hearing that definitely piques his interest. Since there are too many people here, they should go back to the castle and look at it closely. Argrick says of course, and they start riding back. Argrick asks if he can really figure out what the stone is, and Sadrain asks if he's looking down on his knowledge, saying that with his tool, he can definitely figure out what it is. Argrick says that a mage already appraised it and said there's nothing special about it. Sadrain says whatever that mage did, there's no way it can compare to this tool, and he put all of his funds into this thing, and it can analyze whatever object or tool he puts on top of it. Argrick smiles, saying it's time to myth bust this hoe. Sadrain puts the stone down, saying he's really curious, then tells Argrick to start imbuing his magic into it. Argrick puts his hand over it and it begins to glow. It begins to swirl around as the stone starts to glow brighter and brighter, shooting out blue rays as it's resonating with his magic. Argrik is surprised that there's something special about it, and Sidrain says now he can finally hold his head up high. The light continues to grow brighter until it's almost pure white, and then mana starts to come out of it, as well as runes, almost like what Sidrain showed him earlier. Argrik asks if this is a code. Sidrain, surprised, laughs, saying that's right, but it's not just any ordinary code. Argrik says that this is amazing. It's a code whose rules, structures, and, of course, arrangement he has never seen before. This could be as complex as a 6 or 7 chain code. He asks Sidrain if this means the magic hidden in the stone is what is manifesting the code. Sidrain nods his head, saying it's exactly that, and his magic holds the key to unlocking that code. He adds that it only responds to his magic. Argrik wonders what it is and what's the deal with the stone and why it's only reacting to him. Sidrain says that it's a magic he's unfamiliar with, but since he has his reputation as the head of a magic tower, he will attempt this. Argrik says if he succeeds, then maybe he can find out why his magic is different from other people's, and Sidrain says probably. Argrik wishes him luck. It jumps to the academy, specifically to Arabella's personal laboratory. We see that she has books of all kinds, grimoires, and a typewriter-type device. She says it's different than she expected and that there is a special characteristic to the magic code Dane shared with her that she doesn't even have. However, which field of magic is appropriate for her is not being revealed in these results. She used magic reagents, magic gates, and magic engineering, and none of them reacted. She wonders what it could be and she's sure there is something that fits. Then she's surprised, saying that there was a magic field code that had been lost, and his magic might be suitable for it. She starts looking around, wondering where she put it. She moves her books aside until she finds one, saying this is what she was looking for. Alchemy, divination, spiritualism, necromancy, and there's even a primitive magic code. An older book then falls off the desk onto the floor, and she looks over at it. It's so old there's dust flying out of it, and she says it's a book of ancient magic. She says come to think of it, there was a magic kingdom a long time ago that also had magic inherited from called arcana. Given that it is an ancient magic from 2000 years ago, there is no one who knows how to use it. She sighs, wondering what she is saying that ancient magic disappeared thousands of years ago, and there's no way Dane's magic would be suited for it. But then she decides there's nothing to lose and she decides to try it out. She begins to use the stone. She starts to absorb Dane's mana from the stone and swirls it around the room, trying to figure out if the ancient magic will resonate with it or not. Then it begins to ring, and she's surprised, saying that it's actually showing something as the typewriter starts to type by itself. She wonders which one of the things it will be, perhaps alchemy or divination, and she says it'd be great if it was not necromancy. As she starts to read the results, it is something that she was not even prepared for, and she says it's unbelievable, wondering if this is right. Back at the training area, we see the mana still swirling around as Sidrain and Argrik look at the stone. It then breaks open, and Sidrain is happy, saying the seal is finally broken. Argrik says that there's actually something inside. Sidrain tells him that he'll take it out, and Argrik watches. Sidrain reaches for it and then hands it towards Argrik, showing it that it's a silver bracelet. It is very shiny. Sidrain says it looks just like any plain bracelet that you can buy off the street, and he thought there'd be something special about its material, but he feels nothing. Argrik starts to have an entirely different idea, and Sidrain says since it reacted only to his magic, he probably needs to try wearing it. Argrik says okay and raises it up, putting it on his hand. He doesn't feel anything yet, but he looks down anxiously as he starts to imbue mana into it, and it starts to react. Sidrain says, as expected. Argrik sees some strange characters starting to appear, and they look different from the normal magic. Argrik asks Sidrain if he knows what they are, and he starts reading it. He looks like a kid full of excitement, saying that he knows exactly what these are. Argrik starts to sweat with anticipation, and Sidrain says they are ancient runes that nobody in this world can read anymore. Argrik asks what he means, and Sidrain says they are characteristics of the ancient magic kingdom Arcana used. Argrik looks down at it, saying that he heard about Arcana from Arabella when he was young. She said that it was an age when every little thing originated from magic, but one day that age suddenly ended. The only thing that remained from that time were a few relics and stories passed down, and now this one line of magic code. Back in the room, Sidrain laughs, saying he knew his magic was special, but he had no idea it would be related to the ancient kingdom. Argrik says that must be why he can move around so easily in the forest of the last days. Sidrain says that seems to be the case, since the magic from that forest originated from Arcana, and he's always wanted somebody like this to be his disciple. Argrik says in any case he doesn't think he can see anything else in the bracelet, and Sidrain says he'll need to take his time to figure it out, but he shouldn't tell anybody about it. Argrik says he'll do exactly that, and then they start to hear a weird scratching sound. Both are surprised, wondering what the hell this sound is. If you've watched till the end, comment, egg, to let me know. Subscribe for more videos like this, leave a like or a comment to help the channel out. Thanks for watching.